Chapter 555. I'm sorry to inform all of you that the plane cannot take off due to air traffic control. Whoosh. There was a commotion in the cabin. Why is it air traffic control again? Who can tell me what is air traffic control? Don't ever fly with this airline again, they are always late. Can we turn on our cell phones and play some games? Anyway, the plane cannot take off anytime soon. Tang Yong saw Jiang Shangxin turn around and look at the air stewardess who was explaining to the passengers. He smiled and said, there are more and more air traffic control nowadays. No matter what the reason is, they always use air traffic control as an excuse. Seeing that Jiang Shangxin did not respond, Tang Yong continued, you have to drink more warm water. It's good for your body. Don't catch a cold at this time. If that happens, your body's immune system will be weakened and your wound may become infected. If you don't mind, I can accompany you to the hospital when we reach Paris. I have a friend who is a doctor there, thank you. Jiang Shangxin thanked him again. It's okay. Miss, do you always keep people at arm's length? No. Jiang Shangxin replied. I pulled a man to the toilet in the bar and asked him to use me, but he rejected me. This happened last night. Tang Yong felt that there was no way to continue this topic. The man beside her stopped hitting on her and Jiang Shangxin finally got the peace that she wanted. She thought about her father's tragic death, her mother's heartlessness, her husband's viciousness, and the huge and fickle family. At this moment, Jiang Shangxin's heart was as cold as ice. She felt that she was an orphan who was being abandoned by the whole world. As Jiang Shangxin was in the first-class cabin, the service she received was different. A stewardess rushed over and said, Miss, please wait for a moment, the plane will take off soon. Would you like something to drink? No need. Jiang Shangxin replied. Thank you. Jiang Shangxin asked for a blanket from the stewardess and got ready to lie down and rest. She did not sleep last night and encountered such an incident early in the morning. She felt extremely exhausted. Sir, what's the matter? Sir, you can't go in. The voice of the stewardess came from the door. I'm sorry, I'm looking for someone, please make an exception, I'll leave soon. A familiar man's voice rang out. Shangxin widened her eyes in disbelief and stared at Fang Yan, who had appeared at the cabin door with a smile on his face. Jiang Shangxin's mouth moved and she wanted to say something. However, her eyes revealed her emotions first. Large drops of tears rolled down her cheeks as if something was stuck in her throat. Jiang Shangxin had never thought that there would be a man who would still think about her and be willing to do such a thing for her when her husband and mother had abandoned her. In order to keep his departing girlfriend, a man used all kinds of methods to delay the plane and then ran to the plane to confess in front of countless passengers. Wasn't this a classic scene in idol dramas? Fang Yan walked toward Jiang Shangxin step by step. Smiling, he asked, I'm not late. This made Shangxin's tears flow even more rapidly. Unable to speak, she could only shake her head to express her feelings. Follow me back. Fang Yan reached out his hand to Shangxin. Jiang Shangxin wiped her tears with her sleeves but did not agree to Fang Yan's request. I spent so much effort to chase after you. You won't reject me, right? Fang Yan smiled and said. There are so many people watching, how embarrassing would that be for me? Let's go, follow me back. We're not going to Paris. Jiang Shangxin was hesitant. What was the meaning of going back with Fang Yan? What was her relationship with Fang Yan? Would Fang Yan be able to provide her with a safe harbor? Furthermore, if she went back, what would Jiang Jialing think? What would Jiang Zhulu think? How would they treat her? Would they make things difficult for her mother? No matter how cold she was to her, she was still her mother. She was her only family member in this world. Fang Yan had already attracted everyone's attention the moment he appeared. When he reached out his hand to Jiang Shangxin, everyone's gaze became interested. It would be a good thing for them to watch a romantic drama when they were flying. Seeing that the female lead, Jiang Shangxin, was hesitant, the audience automatically played the role of a minor character in an idol drama. Everyone shouted together, "Follow him, follow him, follow him." All the passengers on the plane were shouting, and the shouts were getting louder and louder. Even the captain opened the cockpit door and looked over. Jiang Shangxin wiped her tears with a tissue and looked at Fang Yan with her red and swollen eyes. She said, "Fang Yan, thank you, but I can't go back. Why can't you go back?" Fang Yan smiled and said, "If others don't care about your life, then don't let them control your life. The place you are going to is not a good place for you. Let's go, follow me back." "Fang Yan, follow me back." Tang Yong looked at Fang Yan with an unhappy expression and said, "What's wrong with you? She doesn't want to go back, why must you force her?" Fang Yan glanced at Tang Yong and said, "I didn't force her, I just wanted her to have another choice. She has already made her choice. She doesn't want to go back." Tang Yong said with a gloomy face. He shouted at the air stewardess, "Air stewardess, what's going on now? Can the plane still fly? Anyone can barge in, what if there are terrorists? Is this the professionalism of the airline?" The air stewardess had no choice but to persuade him, "Sir, the plane is about to take off, can you please get off the plane immediately? You will affect the other passengers and the normal operation of the plane." Fang Yan looked at the air stewardess apologetically and said, I'm sorry, I'll leave after saying a few words, very soon. It won't take up too much of everyone's time." "Sir," Fang Yan reached out to Jiang Shangxin again and said, "I know that this is the only way out for you, I am willing to give you another choice." "Why?" Jiang Shangxin stared at Fang Yan and asked. "A friend of mine once said that if someone can give you a bowl of water when you are thirsty, if someone can give you a coat when you are cold, if someone reaches out a hand when someone is down and out, that bowl of water, coat, and hand will be magnified infinitely and become her entire world. She also said that she has experienced what you have been through before, and it makes one feel hopeless just thinking about it. Therefore, she felt that I should take a step out and not wait for a pitiful woman to walk back on her own. Therefore, I rushed over to look for you." Jiang Shangxin's eyes teared up again and she said, "That woman, is she Lu Chaoge?" Fang Yan nodded and said, "She is my friend and also a very great woman. I think that if there is a chance, the two of you will definitely become friends." Jiang Shangxin nodded and said, "She does understand me, you don't know how touched I was when you appeared at the cabin door. But Fang Yan, I can't go back. I can't only think about myself, I have to think about my family, she hurt me and protected me at the same time. I can't make her situation more difficult. I understand your concerns, but have you thought about it? When you reach Paris, who will guarantee your safety?" Jiang Shangxin stared at Fang Yan with her eyes wide open and said, "What do you mean? How was this possible?" She had already agreed to go to Paris and agreed to leave the familiar environment and life. She had even made up her mind to never return. Why were they still unwilling to let her go? Fang Yan sighed softly and said, "No one will believe a woman who has a change of heart. Since they have made the decision to let you leave, they must already know what happened in the bar, right?" Jiang Shangxin remained silent. Of course they knew. If they didn't know, why would they be in such a hurry to chase her out of watching and to France? "Trust me one more time, just like last night." Fang Yan smiled gently and reached out his hand to Jiang Shangxin again. "I know what kind of people they are, I know them better than you." Jiang Shangxin was tempted. Looking at Fang Yan's eyes, she couldn't help but want to reach out her hand. "You idiot, she already said that she doesn't want to go back. What right do you have to threaten her?" Tang Yong shouted angrily and raised his hand to slap Fang Yan's arm. Fang Yan used the little dragon catcher hand to counterattack, but he didn't expect Tang Yong to dodge it. Fong Yan reached out again and Tang Yong actually punched Fong Yan's face. Bam! Fong Yan stabbed Tang Yong's eyes with his fingers like knives. Tang Yong's face was full of fear, but he didn't dodge it. He gritted his teeth and waited for Fong Yan's attack. If Fong Yan dared to hurt someone on the plane, he would be taken away by the air traffic police as a terrorist. Fong Yan's fingers clenched into a fist, and then his fist lightly hit Tang Yong's chest. Bam! Tang Yong flew backward as if he had been electrocuted and his body landed heavily on the cabin. Fong Yan, Jiang Shangxin hurriedly stopped him and said, "He helped me just now." Although Jiang Shangxin didn't like Tang Yong's interruptions and attempts to strike up a conversation, he didn't hate him either. Furthermore, he was the one who helped to bandage his wound just now. He didn't want Fong Yan to hurt Tang Yong either. Fong Yan stared at Tang Yong with a sharp gaze and said, "Don't you find it strange? Why is there a martial arts expert sitting next to you? And he was so vehemently against me bringing you back." Jiang Shangxin stared at Tang Yong in shock, as if she was looking at a poisonous scorpion. Chapter 556. Fong Yan's reminder was timely, but it was also fatal. Why did Tang Yong flirt with her again and again? Why was he not only proficient in medicine but also in martial arts? Why did he react so strongly when Fong Yan asked him to bring her back? Why? Jiang Shangxi knew that this could be a coincidence, and she was willing to believe that it was. However, she knew that it was impossible. Being born in such a family, she clearly knew how to deal with disobedient children. Tang Yong was another undercover agent from the Jiang family, and his mission was to send her to Paris safely, just like her mother's chauffeur, Lu Jiang. However, what would happen after they arrived in Paris? Were they really going to take action against her? Jiang Shangxin's face turned pale, and she felt that it was difficult for her to breathe. She did not want to think of them in the worst way, but the facts that were happening in front of her made her feel like her beliefs were collapsing. "Who are you?" Jiang Shangxin stared at Tang Yong and asked. Tang Yong stared at Fong Yan fiercely and said, "Who am I? I am just a stranger who pitied you and wanted to help you. So what if I know martial arts? Since ancient times, medicine and martial arts have always been inseparable. I learned medicine from my father, so I naturally learned some martial arts. This is the first time I heard that doing good deeds is also a form of conspiracy." Tang Yong looked at Jiang Shangxin with pity and said, "Miss, I checked the wound on your hand just now. Someone bit you, right? Who would do such a disgusting thing? That is a pervert, that is a lunatic. He has already treated you this way, how can you still believe his sweet words? If you go back with him, what if he treats you like this again? What if he does something even more cruel to you?" Fong Yan had already noticed the bandage on Shangxin's hand, but he did not know what kind of wound it was or what caused it. He thought that Jiang Shangxin was accidentally injured because they were too crazy in the bar last night. After all, Jiang Shangxin had not come out of the ladies' toilet when he parted ways with her. He was not sure what happened after that. Now that he heard Tang Yong say this, he realized that there was more to it than meets the eye. Jiang Shangxin was bitten by someone. Moreover, the guy in front of her with bad intentions wanted to push the blame to her. Fong Yan was furious. "I'm not a dog. Why would I bite people?" There was a tinge of doubt in Jiang Shangxin's eyes. Could it be that Tang Yong wasn't a spy that the Jiang family had arranged around her? Just as he said, he was just a stranger who wanted to help her. Jiang Shangxin was a top-notch beauty. She would often receive compliments from others or selfless help from some men. It wasn't entirely impossible for such a thing to happen. Jiang Shangxin looked at Fong Yan and then at Tang Yong. She didn't know what choice she should make next. The stewardess was a little anxious. She stood next to him and urged again, "Sir, the plane is about to take off. Please get off the plane immediately. Otherwise, we will have to call the police." Disrupting flight safety was a serious crime. Fong Yan really didn't want to be taken away by the airport police. As such, he reached out to grab Jiang Shangxin's arm. "Get off the plane with me first. Then, we will find a place for you to think about it. If you insist on leaving, I will help you buy a ticket for the next flight to France. If you are willing to stay, I will bring you to a safe place and guarantee your personal safety." When Tang Yong saw that Fong Yan wanted to pull him away, he swung his fist toward Fong Yan's face again. Huff, the punch was swift and fierce. It seemed like he had some foundation. Fong Yan took a step to the side and dodged Tang Yong's attack. Then, he reached out with lightning speed and grabbed the vital acupuncture point on Tang Yong's wrist. Tang Yong's body instantly became paralyzed, as if he had been electrocuted. If not for Fong Yan's help, he might not have been able to stand. Tang Yong struggled with all his might. However, he still couldn't escape from Fong Yan's grasp. An abnormal flush appeared on his face. Due to the pain, his facial features were deeply scrunched up. When the air stewardess saw that there was a fight, she hurriedly stopped them and said, "Sir, please stop. If not, I will call the police." Fong Yan smiled and said, "I did not fight. He wanted to hit me, but I blocked him. If you don't believe me, you can check the surveillance cameras in the cabin." Of course, no matter what the other party's motive was, Fong Yan would not tangle with a small fry like Tang Yong. He let go of Tang Yong's arm. Tang Yong's body fell to the ground as if he had contracted osteochondrosis. "Sir," a few air stewardesses ran over to help Tang Yong up. Fong Yan grabbed Jiang Shangxin's wrist and said in a tough manner, "Get off the plane with me." Then, he pulled Jiang Shangxin and walked out of the plane. Oh, the passengers on the plane cheered and applauded as if they had just witnessed the prince killing the evil dragon. The air stewardesses helped Tang Yong back to his seat and asked with concern, "Sir, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Tang Yong flung the air stewardess's hand away with a bad attitude and ran out of the cabin behind Fong Yan. After running for a few steps, his knees gave way and he fell to the ground again. What he did not know was that when Fong Yan grabbed the Jinlan acupoint on his wrist just now, he had used a small amount of force and destroyed the energy in his body. Once the energy in his body collapsed, it would be very difficult to gather energy. In the future, it would not be easy for him to even walk like a normal person, let alone practice martial arts. Perhaps Jiang Shangxin still had some doubts about Tang Yong's identity, but Fong Yan already knew the man's motive the moment he saw Tang Yong. His own kind understood a man the best. Tang Yong could not continue chasing after Fong Yan. He hurriedly took out his cell phone from his pocket and dialed a number. He said anxiously. Fong Yan snatched him away. "Idiot!" The man on the other side of the phone roared angrily. The air stewardesses came over to help Tang Yong up again. Tang Yong did not reject them and only asked them to send him off the plane. Now that his target had disappeared, there was no reason for him to go to Paris. Fong Yan dragged Jiang Shangxin's hand and rushed all the way to the resting area of the arrival hall. It was a little strenuous for Jiang Shangxin to run in her high heels. She only looked at Fong Yan after she had sat down on the sofa in the VIP room and asked, "Will there be any trouble?" "No," Fong Yan said with absolute certainty. "If you go to Paris, then there will really be trouble." Jiang Shangxin stared at Fong Yan with bright eyes and bit her lips. She remained silent for a long time. Fong Yan looked at the wound on her finger and asked, "Jiang Zhulu was here. How do you know it was him?" Jiang Shangxin asked. Then, she laughed bitterly and said, "That's right, who else could it be other than him? Jiang Zhulu is like a mad dog now. Are you all right?" Fang Yan asked. I'm fine. Jiang Shangxin shook her head and said, thank you to the man just now, he was the one who helped me bandage it. I know that he is the person who arranged for the Jiang family to be by my side, but I still don't want to believe it. I really don't want to think of human nature in such a dirty and despicable way. Fang Yan nodded and said, I'll help you take a look when we get back. You don't have to say anything, calm down and think about it, stay here or go to Paris. Tell me when you have an answer. After he finished speaking, Fang Yan took out a newspaper and read it seriously. Jiang Shangxin looked at the way Fang Yan read the newspaper attentively and couldn't help but be entranced. Why? Jiang Shangxin asked. Why what? Fang Yan asked without raising his head. Why did you save me? I remember that I already told you the reason on the plane, Fang Yan said. Was it just because of sympathy? Did you misunderstand that I like you? Fang Yan was shocked. No, don't think too much, really. Not even a little bit. You'd better go to Paris. In the end, Jiang Shangxin decided to go back with Fang Yan. Just like what Fang Yan had said, she didn't need to let people who didn't care about their lives control her life. More importantly, her life wouldn't be guaranteed if she went to Paris. Everything was full of uncertainty when one was in a foreign country. If she was attacked on the streets or robbed, she would lose her life. If she stayed in the country, at least Fang Yan would be able to protect her. At least she still had Fang Yan to rely on. Life was like a dream, unpredictable and unpredictable. It was too ironic that an enemy of the past would become someone she could rely on in the future. When Fang Yan drove Jiang Shangxin back, a black Volkswagen SUV followed closely behind them. Fang Yan took a look at the rearview mirror and said, they caught up with us. They really trust me, Jiang Shangxin said with a fierce look. Why? Fang Yan asked. Why do they want to kill you? Jiang Shangxin glanced at Fang Yan and said, Fang Yan, you are such a hypocrite. You didn't like me from the start, but you didn't reject me when I asked you to buy me a drink. I caused trouble in the bar and took the initiative to smash someone's head with a wine bottle, but you still tried your best to protect me from any harm. Didn't you want to get something to use against Jiang Junling from me? Now that the two of you are in a stalemate in watching and neither of you can do anything to the other, it must be very painful, right? Fang Yan didn't feel embarrassed that his privacy was exposed. He explained, when I agreed to buy you a drink, I did have some thoughts about you. At that time, I was still hoping that you might be able to mend your ways. If you were a mole, it would indeed be easier for me to deal with Jiang Junling. However, after I got to know you, I gave up on this idea and treated you as a friend. I am talking to you and interacting with you as a friend. I don't want to get anything from you, not even the slightest clue. If you still look at me like that at this time, it is the most serious insult to the word friend. If I expose some scandals about Jiang Junling to you, will you accept it? Yes. Fang Yan said. Chapter 557. Accept. Of course he had to accept. Just like what Jiang Shangxin had said, the reason why Fang Yan tried so hard to please Jiang Shangxin, treated her to drinks, helped her fight, and even allowed her to touch his body, wasn't it because he wanted to get some juicy information from her? Now that he had come back to his senses, a promiscuous woman was more valuable than gold. Strange, why did the word promiscuous sound so weird when it was replaced with a promiscuous woman? Could it be that a woman could not turn back after doing something wrong, or could it be that there was no turning back? Jiang Shangxin was willing to give Fang Yan some juicy information about his old rival, Jiang Junling, which made Fang Yan very happy. Jiang Shangxin sneered and said, "Don't you think that I am insulting you now? We are already friends. If you still hide things from your friend, that is the most serious insult to the word friend." Fang Yan turned the car onto Kunshan Road and sped toward the city. The Volkswagen behind him sped up at the same time and followed closely behind the BMW. After a period of delay, it was already 9:00 in the morning. The cool breeze stopped, the fog dissipated, and the veil in the sky was lifted. The red sun slowly rose into the sky, giving off a lazy glow. The number of cars on the road gradually increased, and even the suburbs of Huaqing began to glow with vitality. The Volkswagen continued to speed up until it was about to overtake the BMW that Fang Yan was in. The car windows were opened, and the pitch-black muzzles were aimed at the BMW. Fang Yan didn't expect them to dare to make a move on the main road, and he didn't expect them to use guns. "Sit properly," Fang Yan shouted anxiously. As he warned Jiang Shangxin, he took the initiative to drive the BMW toward the Volkswagen beside him. Crash! The right side of the BMW hit the body of the Volkswagen. The Volkswagen couldn't bear the weight, and the front of the car lost its balance and swerved left and right. The body of the car also moved to the side. Bang, 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 someone fired continuously. One of the bullets hit the rear of the BMW, and more bullets flew out. Fang Yan increased the distance between the two cars, then he started the car again and hit the Volkswagen. Quang! The body of the Volkswagen caved in, and the car let out a roar as it moved towards the edge of the road. Fang Yan. He leaned Shangxin's body against the seat and gripped the seatbelt tightly. Every time Fang Yan hit her, it made her dizzy. She was sitting on the side of the impact. If the car broke or disintegrated, she would be the first victim. Perhaps before Fang Yan killed the killer in the Volkswagen, he would have killed her first. "Sit still and don't move, it'll be fine," Fang Yan comforted her. He was not reckless, nor was he arrogant. The reason why he dared to use this BMW to crash into the Volkswagen again and was not afraid of knocking Shangxin, who was sitting beside him, to death, was because he knew the origin of this BMW. This BMW T9 series was specially ordered by Chaoyan Technology from BMW in Germany. The body of the car weighed 6 tons, and the important parts such as the door and the front were all made of rare metals. Although it was not bulletproof, it could prevent collisions and effectively protect the driver and the passengers in the cabin. This car had always been Lu Chaoga's car. After a series of attacks on Lu Chaoga, the Qin family did not dare to let Lu Chaoga take the risk of driving alone. As a result, the security personnel equipped him with a more sturdy and bulletproof custom-made GMC car. As Chaoyan Technology developed rapidly and fiercely, Lu Chaoga's importance increased, and there were fewer and fewer opportunities to use this car. When Fang Yan returned to Huaqing, he naturally became the new owner of this BMW. Hearing Fang Yan's comforting words, Shangxin could only grip the seat belt tightly and completely entrust her life to Fang Yan. Quang! Fang Yan drove the BMW and crashed into it again. Quang! It was another fierce collision. The body of the Volkswagen became more and more damaged, and the side of the car door facing Fang Yan was already deeply indented. The car door cracked open, and the shooter got up again and fired in the direction of Fang Yan and Shangxin. Bang! The bullet hit the car door and was reflected by the rare metal. At the same time, Fang Yan finally saw the shooter in the Volkswagen. He had shifty eyes and a huge mole on his chin. He was ugly to begin with, and the black mole made him look even more wretched. When the shooter wanted to continue shooting, Fang Yan drove the BMW and crashed into it again. Quang, 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 again and again, it moved horizontally and collided with the car again and again. The Volkswagen had already been forced to the edge of the road, and the car tilted unevenly to one side. Quang! Fang Yan stepped hard on the accelerator and slammed the car with the most force he had ever used. Quang! 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 The body of the Volkswagen rolled and crashed into the ditch by the side of the road. Fang Yan did not stop the car. He drove away after crashing the Volkswagen into the ditch. Jiang Shangxin heaved a long sigh of relief. When she turned around, she could only see a thick cloud of smoke, and she could no longer see the Volkswagen that had been following closely behind them. It must have liked its new home very much. "Are you all right?" Fang Yan asked. "I'm fine," Jiang Shangxin said dejectedly. "Fang Yan, they wanted to kill me just now. They might have wanted to kill me too," Fang Yan said. "No, they wanted to kill me," Jiang Shangxin said firmly. "I know that they were aiming at me, and I know this feeling very well. Is this what it feels like to be a family member?" "This is what it feels like to be a family member. It's really disappointing." "What exactly have you mastered?" Fang Yan asked. "What?" Jiang Shangxin asked. "I mean, why did they do this to you? Don't you think that they were too anxious? What kind of information did Jiang Shangxin have on them? Why did they want to get rid of her without any regard for the consequences? Of course, they might want to get rid of him, but Fang Yan was very clear that the possibility of this happening was very low. If Jiang Junling wanted to get rid of Fang Yan, he would at least choose a slightly more secluded location and use a more obscure method. There was no need to play such a scary game in broad daylight. This was a murder, not a movie. They were very anxious, and they did not want Jiang Shangxin to come back or get together with him. In that case, there was only one explanation. What kind of secret did Jiang Shangxin have on her? He was really curious. Jiang Shangxin's expression changed slightly, but she did not answer Fang Yan's question. "Even if they don't like you, even if they don't want to see you get together with me, they don't have to make it so obvious. They can take their time to deal with this matter and let you receive the punishment they want to give you, but not now, not this morning." Jiang Shangxin's mouth moved, but she did not say anything. Fang Yan patted her thigh, which was wrapped in jeans, and said with a smile, "I know this is a difficult choice, so you don't have to tell me the answer." Jiang Shangxin lowered her head and did not say a word. No one knew what she was thinking. "Be careful," Fang Yan suddenly shouted. As he shouted, he had already turned the steering wheel and rushed toward the ditch on the left side of the road. The car rumbled like a beast in heat. Screech! Fang Yan stepped on the brakes, but the car continued to slide forward. Screech! 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 The front half of the car was suspended in the air, and the rear half of the car was caught by a tree stump by the roadside. A moment of carelessness and the car fell into the ditch by the roadside. Crack! A huge rock flew over their heads and landed on the stone ground far away, smashing into pieces. Rocks flew everywhere, and the car was hit with a loud bang. Jiang Shangxin wanted to unbuckle the seatbelt, but Fang Yan stopped her and said, "Don't move." Jiang Shangxin looked at Fang Yan doubtfully, but still decided to listen to his arrangements. She was not a woman who liked to rely on others, and she still maintained her independent personality even when facing a strong person like Jiang Zhulu. However, when she met Fang Yan, she always followed his instructions out of habit. Fang Yan did not get out of the car either. After he pressed the reverse gear, he tapped on the accelerator with the tip of his foot and reversed the BMW. With a sharp turn, the car stopped beautifully by the side of the road. Fang Yan unbuckled the seatbelt and held Jiang Shangxin's hand as he got out of the car. There was another black car parked by the side of the road, and an old man wearing a black shirt and a pair of sunglasses stood on the roof of the car with a bamboo pole in his hand. He looked at Fang Yan, who was walking toward them, with a serious expression on his face. The fisherman. He was a close friend of Fang Yan's grandfather, Fang Huwei, and a senior martial artist who had repeatedly given Fang Yan pointers. However, he had another identity, Jiang Junling's consecrator. If possible, Fang Yan really did not want to get into a fight with this old man whom he respected. However, looking at the situation today, He was afraid that the problem would not be solved without a fight. Fang Yan's head was throbbing, and he wished he could dig a hole and hide in it. Fang Yan stood far away and looked at the fisherman, whose clothes were fluttering in the autumn wind. He chuckled and said, "Old master, are you fishing? If you want to fish, go to the sea. Why did you come to this place where there is no river or sea? Who said that you have to go to a place where there is a river and sea to fish? Didn't I give you a great white shark just now?" That trick of luring the shark from the east was indeed not bad. But, isn't it a little too much? I didn't provoke you, why did you lure the shark to eat me? The fisherman looked at Fang Yan and said seriously, "Fang Yan, you are very smart, and you should know the purpose of my trip. That trick just now was just a test. If you don't cooperate, the next shark will swallow you. I know what you want." Fang Yan said angrily, "Fine, I promise you. Let her leave, and I will stay to accompany you." Chapter 558. The fisherman's face darkened, and he almost fell off the roof of the car due to Fang Yan's anger. "The person I want is Jiang Shangxin, and the person I want to bring back is also Jiang Shangxin. Why should I keep you here? What do you mean by, you know what I want? If you really knew what I wanted, would you still say such stupid words that made me want to beat you up?" The fisherman glared at Fang Yan and shouted, "Fang Yan, don't be unreasonable, you are the unreasonable one." Fang Yan said, "If you are not unreasonable, why did you come here early in the morning to block the road? Why did you fish up a huge rock to smash my car? Do you know that if it wasn't for my quick reflexes and good driving skills, both of our lives would have been gone just now, you would have been a murderer by now. Even if we didn't die, it would be an attempted murder. As long as I make a call, the police can arrest you and bring you back to jail. If you meet some perverts, you will have to pick up the soap for them, pick up the soap." "What soap?" The fisherman was old and never went online, so he didn't understand the deep meaning behind the words "pick up the soap." Fang Yan looked at the fisherman's old face and said, "But you don't have to worry about this problem, probably, those male prisoners won't be interested in you, right? They like young men with fair skin and tender flesh, you shameless person." The fisherman finally understood the close relationship between staying in jail and picking up the soap. He flew into a rage and wanted to fight with Fang Yan with the fishing rod in his hand. Fang Yan patted Jiang Shangxin's shoulder and said, "Leave, the person they want is me, I will go with them." Jiang Shangxin shook her head. She knew that the person they wanted was her. She was the person involved in the incident. If she were to leave just like that, where would Fang Yan be? Fang Yan was her benefactor, her savior. She, the person involved, had passed away and pushed all the problems, responsibilities, and dangers onto Fang Yan. She could not do such a thing. She could do it in the past, but not now. "Let's go." Fang Yan shouted angrily, "I'm not your man, nor am I your lover. There's no need for you to stay and die with me. Even if you say so, I won't believe you. Let's go, let's not delay our men's negotiation, Fang Yan." The fisherman felt that it was better for him to make things clearer. Otherwise, this kid would keep pretending to be crazy. After dealing with him a few times, he could roughly gauge his kung fu, but his shamelessness was unfathomable. "You can go, but she has to stay." Fang Yan stared at the fisherman with wide eyes and said, "You are already so old, and you still want to hit on a little girl? Are you okay now? All right, don't stand on top of the car and act like Superman. The wind is strong and the waves are strong, you have to be careful not to hurt your waist." "Fang Yan, don't slander me, I'm not that kind of person." Fang Yan had a serious expression on his face and said in an extremely serious tone, "Senior, if you are really a kind and virtuous person, why would you do such a thing? You should know what kind of person Jiang Junling is. and you should also know what kind of punishment she will face when she returns. Senior, you are also from the underworld, so you should be familiar with the principles of martial arts. Don't bully others with martial arts, don't use your power to bully others. Senior, you can't be considered a real martial artist by doing this, right? If Shangxin really meets with misfortune after she returns, how can you bear to do so? Will your heart of martial arts not be damaged at all? One has no choice in the underworld. The fisherman was a little down and sighed. It's not convenient for me to tell you the reason, but I must bring this girl back. Fang Yan, I don't want to fight with you. You should leave. Fang Yan smiled and said, if I leave just like that, what kind of man would I be? Fang Yan held Shangxin's wrist and said, when I chased her back, I promised her that I would ensure her safety. It's not that a man's promise is worth 1,000 taels of gold, which man hasn't lied to others before. I just feel that since I have said it in front of so many people, I can only try my best to fulfill it. I am a man who cares about his reputation. The rims of Jiang Shangxin's eyes were red, and large droplets of tears rolled down her cheeks. She wasn't a pretentious woman, but the feeling of being taken care of and protected by someone was really heartwarming. It was like a salmon fillet that had been dipped in a large amount of wasabi. When one bit into it, all the hair on her body stood up, and tears gushed out. The more she endured, the more intense the feeling became. It was impossible to guard against. She didn't get this feeling from her father, because she had a cold relationship with her father since she was very young. She didn't get this feeling from her mother, because her mother was very busy and didn't have time to take care of her. She didn't get this feeling from her husband either, because she didn't need him when he could protect her, but when she needed him to protect her, he stood against her. She didn't get this feeling from her other relatives, because they wouldn't offend Jiang Junling, who was very influential in the Jiang family, just for her. But she got it from Fang Yan, a man who was originally unrelated to her, or rather, hostile to her. It was a very strange feeling, and a very ridiculous thing. Jiang Shangxin pushed Fang Yan's palm away, took 2 steps forward, looked at the fisherman, and said, let's go, I will go back with you. I know that my brother wants me, he is afraid. The fisherman looked at Jiang Shangxin and said, get in the car. Jiang Shangxin turned to look at Fang Yan and said, Fang Yan, you have done what you promised. I know that you are a man who is very guarded, and you won't believe anything that others say easily. But, I still want to tell you, it's nice to meet you. It's really a very happy thing. Thank you. After Jiang Shangxin finished speaking, she walked toward the black car under the feet of the fisherman. Fang Yan grabbed Jiang Shangxin's arm and said, do you know what it means for you to go back with him? I know. Jiang Shangxin said, I know it even more clearly than you think. Fang Yan, I have known my brother for more than 20 years, I know what kind of person he is. Fang Yan shook his head and said, whether you know it or not, I will not let you go. You have to listen to me on this matter. Don't think that I am doing this for my own good, I don't feel good about not being able to bring you back. Fang Yan looked at the fisherman and said, either you let her go, or I will go with her. The fisherman raised the fishing rod in his hand and said, since this is the case, let's see what we can do. Everyone says that you are the leader of the resurgence of the Taiji sect. I want to see if you can carry this burden. Put in some effort, don't embarrass your grandfather. Fang Yan sighed and said, Shangxin is just a weak and powerless woman. Do you have the heart to bring her back? You have practiced martial arts all your life, just to bully a woman with a pitiful background. The fisherman was furious. He shook the fish tank in his hand, and a silk line wrapped around Fang Yan's neck. He scolded loudly and said, you rascal, you have broken my state of mind again, you are as despicable and shameless as your grandfather. The brave had no fear. During a battle, if one had a reason to win and a fighting spirit to win, then it would have an additional effect on oneself during the battle. Fang Yan deliberately made Shangxin sound pitiful and described her as a little rabbit that was being bullied by others, and the fisherman was the accomplice that was going to send the little rabbit into the big bad wolf's mouth. In this way, the fisherman would lose his righteous stance and the reason to win during the battle with Fang Yan. Breaking one's state of mind and weakening one's fighting spirit, Fang Yan was already invincible on the mental level before the battle even started. Most importantly, could it be that Fang Yan's grandfather, Fang Huwei, often did such things when he was fighting with others? From the fisherman's angry roar, it was obvious that this was not the first time he had suffered a loss in front of the Fang family. Swoosh! The fishing line was like a steel knife, and it quickly and silently coiled around Fang Yan's neck. If the fishing line wrapped around Fang Yan's neck, it would only take a gentle pull for his head to be chopped off. With a lift of his wrist, Fang Yan sent Shangxin's body far away. Shangxin only felt that she was lifted up by a gust of air, and her body was completely out of her control. By the time she landed, she was already a few meters away from the battlefield. At the same time that Fang Yan sent Shangxin away, he tapped the tip of his foot on the ground and leaped high into the air. He leaped very high, and he stepped on the fishing line with his feet. His body rose into the air and charged toward the fisherman who was standing on the roof of the car. He waved his hands and attacked the fisherman 38 times in a row. His palms were silent, but they stirred up a strong airflow. The 38 palms merged together and formed a tornado-like storm, and the eye of the storm was the fisherman who was standing on the roof of the car. Cloud-expelling palm. Fang Yan's body spun 360 degrees in the air, and he smashed down in the fisherman's direction with a powerful aura. Clang! When the airflow swept past, a huge hole appeared where the fisherman was standing. The entire roof of the car sank into the car, and the driver wanted to escape, but he was stuck between the car doors. However, the real target of the attack, the fisherman, was nowhere to be seen. Bam! When Fang Yan landed on the ground, he looked at the fisherman who was hanging upside down on the tree by the roadside. You are so young, but you can summon clouds and rain with a flip of your hand. You can create a storm in an instant and destroy everything. Not bad at all. The fisherman's expression was solemn, but there was a sense of gratification in his tone. He said, I don't have any grandchildren. Old man Fang has been arrogant all his life, but it's worth it to have a grandson like you. Chapter 559. Save me. The driver stuck his head out of the car door and half of his body was stuck in the car. His body was drenched in blood and there was a pool of blood on the ground. He must have been injured somewhere. He screamed and waved to Shangxin for help. There were only 4 people present, Fang Yan, the fisherman, Shangxin, and the driver. Fang Yan was fighting with the fisherman and could not be distracted to save him. He could only place his hopes on Shangxin. Shangxin looked at Fang Yan in a daze and did not notice the driver's cry for help. This was not the first time that Shangxin saw Fang Yan in action, but she was once again conquered by his skills. Her body was lifted by a gust of air just now and when she reacted, she was already a few meters away. What was going on? What was going on when Fang Yan jumped so high and flew into the air like a bird? Furthermore, he could make a hole in the roof of the car with just one slap. Was this magic? Fang Yan slapped 38 times in a row. As his movements were too fast, Shangxin only saw one slap. In the eyes of the bystanders, the truth was that Fang Yan slapped the roof of the car and it sank into the car. Shangxin was not stupid. She knew that when Fang Yan was fighting with the fisherman, it was the best time for her to leave this place. However, Shangxin did not leave. She knew that Fang Yan was very powerful, but what if Fang Yan could not defeat the old fisherman? It was said that a woman in love had 0 IQ. This sentence was especially suitable for Shangxin. Because she was in love, she was more worried. When Fong Yan's tornado shot out, the fisherman knew that this kid's strength was shocking. That was the power of nature, and it was irresistible. He could not block it or destroy it. The only way was to avoid it and choose to escape. He flicked his wrist and the fishing line in front of the fishing rod flew towards the big tree at the side. The thread wrapped around the tree trunk, and he darted out like Spider-Man who had released a flying thread. Yes, the fisherman holding the fishing rod did look like the superhero created by Hollywood, Spider-Man. The fisherman's legs were in the air and his entire body was hanging on the tree trunk by the fishing line. The tree trunk creaked and groaned, as if it would break at any moment. Fong Yan looked at the fisherman and said, "I am very happy to be praised by the fisherman. Why don't we find a place to drink tea and chat instead of fighting and killing?" The fisherman sneered and said, "You are too arrogant. This is just the beginning. It's not even a warm-up, and you're already thinking of running away. I'm not trying to escape. I'm just afraid that I'll hurt you." Fong Yan acted as if he was thinking for her sake. "This is just a little bit of strength, not even 1/10 of my strength, and you keep praising me. You say that a tiger has no descendants, and that heroes come from the young. I did not say that is a hero, but that is what you have shown. This is enough to make you gasp in surprise, which means that your power is far from mine. You can't beat me anyway, so there is no need for us to continue fighting, right? If I really hurt you, wouldn't my grandpa break my legs when I get back?" "You sharp-tongued brat," the fisherman shouted angrily. "There is no need for your grandpa to break your legs, I will break your legs right now." As the fisherman spoke, he flicked his wrist. Crack, the branch that was hanging on the fishing line snapped and flew towards Fong Yan with its lush leaves. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the branches carried the sound of the wind, and leaves fell as they flew. However, the falling leaves did not scatter with the wind. Instead, they flew towards Fong Yan like leaves. The saying, "flowers and leaves can hurt people," was used to describe the experts of the Jianghu. Fong Yan's body spun on the spot. Drunken crane riding the wind made her look like a butterfly flying through the flowers. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the leaves pierced through his head, cheeks, ribs, crotch, and other parts of his body, but they could not touch his body. In Jiang Shangxin's eyes, Fong Yan was strolling leisurely in the rain of leaves, and his posture was extremely carefree. Bang, 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 the leaves pierced the ground or the black car, and the body of the car was cut one after another. There were also 2 leaves that pierced the thighs of the driver of the black car. The driver could only watch as the leaves flew towards him, but he could not avoid them. He could only scream in pain again and again. The most terrible thing was the thick tree trunk that was thrown over by the silver line. They came crashing towards Fong Yan's head, as if they were attacking indiscriminately. Fong Yan did not avoid them, and his body rushed straight towards the tree trunk. When he was about to get close, he suddenly punched out. The tree trunk was like a lit firecracker, suddenly exploding with a series of crackling sounds. Fong Yan's body continued to rush forward, and he headed towards the fisherman who was pouncing towards him. The fisherman held the fishing rod in his hand, and the fishing rod pierced towards Fong Yan's chest like a long sword. What was even more strange was that the fishing line seemed to have eyes, and it actually wrapped around Fong Yan's body from behind. There was a spear in front of him, and there was a net behind him. It was a pincer attack, and it was difficult to advance or retreat. Fong Yan did not advance, nor did he retreat. His body instantly stood still, and then he stepped on the yin and yang poles, and he spun rapidly on the spot. Whoosh, the long line passed by him, and it attacked where the fisherman was. The fishing rod in the fisherman's hand carried the faint sound of wind and thunder. It was not a long sword, but it had a murderous intent. The bamboo rod in the fisherman's hand trembled non-stop, as if it was too old to exert any strength. The spiritual snake flicked its tongue. Fong Yan's eyes, glabella, mouth, throat, chest, and abdomen were all the targets of the fisherman's attack. If he was slightly careless, he would be stabbed to death. Fong Yan's charging speed did not decrease, and his footsteps were still steady and firm. The Taiji heart spun wildly, and the Taiji domain was also fully unleashed. In Fong Yan's mind, the bamboo rod in the fisherman's hand turned into a long red snake. The snake's head shook non-stop, but the snake's tail did not move. Hit the snake where it hurts. Fong Yan slashed his palm over. Gotcha! The snake's head was cut off, and the bamboo rod broke into two. The fisherman stabbed again with the broken branch, and Fong Yan slashed again. Gotcha! Stabbed again. Slashed again. Gotcha! Stabbed again. Hacked again. The fisherman stabbed 7 times in a row, and Fong Yan slashed 7 times in a row. Every time he slashed, a section of the bamboo rod would break off. Very quickly, the bamboo rod was left with only a small section in the fisherman's hand. When Jiang Shangxin saw this, before the smile on her face could spread, she saw the fisherman raise the broken bamboo rod in his hand and stab it toward Fong Yan's chest. Fong Yan, Jiang Shangxin called out anxiously. TCH, the bamboo rod pierced into Fong Yan's body, and the bamboo rod in the fisherman's hand disappeared completely. Fong Yan, Jiang Shangxin was really frightened. She looked at the sharp bamboo rod that disappeared from Fong Yan's body in disbelief, and she was unwilling to believe what she had seen. Fong Yan stood up to protect her, and if Fong Yan was injured or killed because of this, then, how could she continue to live? Her eyes were wet, and big drops of tears rolled down her cheeks. Her body trembled violently, and she wanted to rush up to check on Fong Yan's condition, but she realized that her legs did not have the strength to move at all. When her father took Feng Xing away, she was not by his side, and all she saw was his swollen corpse. Therefore, she could not experience that kind of feeling. Now, Fong Yan had died in front of her, and this kind of feeling was really heart-wrenching. The fisherman's attack was successful, and he took a step back. Fong Yan stood where he was without moving. He looked at the fisherman and said, "You predicted this a long time ago." The fisherman nodded and said, "I predicted that you could block 5 of my attacks, but I did not expect you to block 7. What about the 8th attack?" "There is no 8th attack," the fisherman said. "The first spurt of energy, the second weak, and the third exhausted. I could defy logic and practice until the 5th attack, and that was already my limit. If I can't kill someone with 3 attacks, then I'm an opponent. If I can't kill someone with 5 attacks, then I'm an expert. If I can't kill someone with 7 attacks, then I'm a killer, so you chose to give up?" Fong Yan asked. "No, I only chose to let you attack," the fisherman looked at Fong Yan and said. "When I made the 8th attack, I thought you would counterattack. You have the heart of Tai Chi, you could clearly see the trajectory of my attacks. When I made my move, you only needed to make a simple dragon-catching hand to snatch my sword, then take the opportunity to stab into my chest or the 3rd rib. Unfortunately, you didn't do that." Fong Yan smiled and said, "I can't do that." "Why not?" "Because you are my grandpa's friend," Fong Yan said. "Although my grandpa always called you hanged ghost, I know that in his heart, you are his friend." The fisherman's face was sad, and he said, "What a pity, what a pity, there's nothing to feel pity about." Fong Yan comforted him. "You are alive, he is also alive, isn't that worth getting you 2 drunk?" The fisherman laughed out loud. He patted Fong Yan's shoulder hard and said, "Well said. I'm alive, and he's alive. Isn't that enough for us to get drunk?" The fisherman looked at Fong Yan and said, "Brat, I've lost shamelessly, and I've lost wholeheartedly." Fang Yan pulled out the half of the bamboo stick stuck in his chest and offered it to the fisherman with both hands, saying, "Thank you for your guidance, Senior." The fisherman's eighth attack was also seen by Fang Yan, so he used the heart of Tai Chi to grasp its flow. When the sword came, Fang Yan's body shifted and used his arm to catch the half of the bamboo stick, stopping the fisherman's attack. How could there be any guidance? "You won against me with your own skills, that's all," the fisherman said. He took the half of the bamboo stick that Fang Yan gave him, then stabbed it into his chest. Cha! The sound of flesh being pierced could be heard, and fresh blood instantly stained his chest. "Senior," Fang Yan hurriedly stopped him. The fisherman waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, I won't die." The fisherman looked at Fang Yan meaningfully and said, "You were supposed to stab me, but since you weren't willing to do it, I had no choice but to do it for you." The fisherman looked at Shangxin, who was crying bitterly not far away, and said, "Let's go. Let's go. Leave with him and never come back. It's not worth it for you to come back." Chapter 560. In the old residence. In the small courtyard. The grass was green, and the shadows of the trees were dense. There was the autumn breeze, the intoxicating fragrance of the flowers, and the sound of birds and insects. The autumn in the south was still humid and warm. The moist and warm weather nourished the flowers and plants, making them look especially energetic and pleasing. Jiang Junling liked osmanthus flowers, and there was an osmanthus tree planted in the courtyard where he lived. This tree had been around for some years, and its branches were thick. It was covered with scars as if it had experienced hundreds of battles, big and small. It looked like a disabled veteran. However, the flowers that bloomed from this old tree had a strong fragrance. It was even more fragrant than the osmanthus tree in Jiang Junling's osmanthus courtyard in Yanjing. Jiang Junling stood under the osmanthus tree, reached out to pluck a bouquet and sniffed it. Because of the rain that had just fallen, the stamens of the flowers were still stained with water. When Jiang Junling placed the osmanthus flower at the tip of his nose, the water droplets dripped onto his face and body. Jiang Junling took a deep breath and looked extremely satisfied. He smiled and said, "It is said that the oranges in the south are not sweet in the north, but the osmanthus is so fragrant whether it is in the south or the north." Li Yun stood next to Jiang Junling and said, "The military order is a person who has tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex, so he felt that this osmanthus is fragrant. If those uncouth men were to smell it, how would they be able to distinguish between the southern and northern osmanthus fragrance?" Jiang Junling nodded and said, "There are people who can appreciate flowers, but there must be flowers to appreciate." Jiang Junling looked at Li Yun gently and asked in a teasing voice, "Auntie, do you think we can appreciate flowers today?" Li Yun's face was pale, and she said softly, "Military order, Shangxin is still young and doesn't understand. This time she is in the wrong. I will definitely teach her a lesson. I will definitely send her abroad and never let her come back. I will personally send her there." Jiang Junling shook his head and sighed, saying, "Men are sentimental, while women are devoted and heartless. There's no turning back. A woman who has a change of heart will never turn back." Military order. Li Yun hurried forward and tugged at Jiang Junling's sleeve. With a pleading look on her face, she said, "Military order, please let Shangxin off this time. I beg you, please let Shangxin off this time. I'll agree to any of your conditions. I'm willing to be your slave and do whatever you want me to do. I'm begging you, let Shangxin off this time, all right?" Jiang Junling reached out his hand to caress Li Yun's worried face, and softly said, "Auntie, you are a good woman, but you fell into the hands of a man like fourth uncle. This is fate's injustice to you, and the Jiang family has let you down. So, fate and the Jiang family want to give you some compensation. Thus, you are now in control of the best business of the generals, and you have become a strong woman who is admired and sought after by countless people. Dazzling and glorious. Auntie, you are also a capable woman. Your capabilities make it hard for others to bear to hurt you even the slightest bit. This is also the reason why I agreed to you sending Shangxin overseas. Because I know that you only have this one daughter by your side. Both of you depend on each other for survival, and your relationship is something that I want to protect. So, no matter how much Shangxin angers or hurts me, I won't stoop to her level for your sake. You are right, she is still a child, and she doesn't know any better. But Auntie, there must be a limit to everything. Jiang Junling's fingers slid downwards, caressing Li Yun's face, neck, and finally stopping at her chest. Li Yun's body trembled violently, but she gritted her teeth and stood there with her chest out, allowing Jiang Junling to do whatever he wanted. I should stop now that I'm here. Jiang Junling said. He reached out and rubbed the soft flesh on Shangxin's chest gently, saying, if I continue, I will be crossing the line. Jiang Junling pulled his hand away from Li Yun's chest and said with a cold expression, how can you cross the line? Military order. At this moment, the wooden door of the courtyard was pushed open from the outside. The fisherman walked in with his hand on his chest, which was bleeding profusely. Half of his body was already stained red with blood. The two old men who were focused on playing chess on the eaves of the courtyard glanced in their direction, but immediately looked away. It was as if nothing in this world was more important than playing chess. Jiang Junling walked over quickly, looked at the fisherman with concern, and asked, how did you get hurt so badly? He then shouted at the man in black at the door, why are you standing there? Hurry up and bandage the priest's wound. The group of people started to get busy, but the fisherman looked at Jiang Junling apologetically and said, eldest young master, I've disappointed you. I wasn't able to help you bring him back. Li Yun was slightly happy, but when she saw that Jiang Junling was looking at her from the corner of his eye, she quickly kept her thoughts to herself. You're already injured to this extent, why do you still need to bring him back? Jiang Junling smiled and comforted her. Don't worry, just focus on recuperating. We'll go and find him after you've recovered. I wasn't injured by anyone, the fisherman said. Then how did you get injured? I injured myself, the fisherman said honestly. Jiang Junling's face turned gloomy, and a murderous look flashed across his eyes. His expression twisted, and he sneered, what does priest mean by this? You're worried that you can't explain yourself, so you resorted to this trick. Am I, Jiang Junling, so petty that I'm not trusted by priest? Eldest young master, you've misunderstood, the fisherman said. I attacked with all my might, but he blocked 7 of my attacks. I stabbed the 8th time, but he could hurt me, but he didn't. So, I stabbed myself with a sword. I stabbed myself on his behalf. Jiang Junling's expression softened a bit, and he said, he's also someone who knows how to buy people's hearts. He did something like this because he wanted you to remember his favor. If he didn't hurt you, then he wouldn't have hurt you, so why did you have to stab yourself? Why did you make yourself so bloody? Elder you, take care of yourself. I'm sorry about this, eldest young master, the fisherman said. Violated the vow we made back then. Jiang Junling waved his hand, and said, I didn't save your family to make you work for me. I told you a long time ago that if you wanted to, you could stay by my side and help me. If you didn't want to, you could always go back and live out your remaining years. Why would I hold on to such a small matter from back then? Not to mention, I'm in the wrong here. I know your relationship with the Fong family, but I still asked you to go out and bring people. Isn't that putting you in a difficult position? Eldest young master, Jiang Junling waved his hand and said, all right, that's enough. Talking hurts your spirit, go back to your room and rest. I'll get someone to send you some tonics. Rest well and put aside all other matters for now. The fisherman bowed deeply to Jiang Junling, turned around, and walked out of the courtyard. Jiang Junling stared at the fisherman's hunched back, and a cold look flickered in his eyes. Li Yun noticed the General Ling's hand. The fresh and delicate osmanthus flowers in his hand had been squeezed until juice flowed out. In the courtyard, the fragrance of the osmanthus flowers was even stronger. Jiang Junling threw the flower dregs on the ground, and Li Yun hurriedly took a towel and passed it to him. Jiang Junling wiped his hands and walked toward the house. He said, "Give Jiang Shangxin a call, and say that you're being held captive." Military order. Jiang Junling suddenly turned around, smiled, and said, "You're not lying, I'm indeed prepared to do that." Fang Yan didn't bring Jiang Shangxin back to Lu Chaoga's villa. Although Lu Chaoga was full of sympathy for Jiang Shangxin's encounter, and she was also part of the reason why Fang Yan chased after someone with a speeding car early in the morning, the woman in the family was a tiger. One mountain couldn't accommodate two tigers, unless one was a male and the other was a female. Lu Chaoga wouldn't like Jiang Shangxin's arrival, nor would she like the arrival of any other woman. That was Lu Chaoga's home, and she was the absolute ruler of that family. She wouldn't wish for another person to challenge her authority. Just like how no woman would wish for her authority to be challenged by an outsider. Fang Yan pondered for a while and brought Jiang Shangxin to the Underground Research Institute of Chaoyan Science and Technology. This was a place that was both familiar and unfamiliar at the same time. Ever since he came here once 3 years ago, Fang Yan hadn't been here again. It was still the same inconspicuous signboard, the same inconspicuous courtyard, and the same small gray building. However, the small building today was no longer the small building from 3 years ago, and the Chaoyan Science and Technology today was no longer the Chaoyan Science and Technology from 3 years ago. 3 years ago, Chaoyan Science and Technology had just started. When Lu Chaoga said that she wanted to build a business empire for Fang Yan, it was like a laughing stock. However, 3 years later, with the help of the Rubik's Cube technology, Chaoyan Science and Technology's products were sold all over the country and even the world. Chaoyan Science and Technology's Little Flame had become one of the most valuable trademarks in Huaxia. The current Chaoyan Science and Technology was a business empire, and it was also a giant aircraft carrier that was hard to ignore. Jiang Junling was guarding watching, but it was difficult for him to achieve anything. How much power did Chao Yan exert behind the scenes? Chao Yan had adopted a defensive measure that was loose on the outside but tight on the inside. There were only 2 men guarding the security booth at the entrance, but a violent force could be felt from inside the small courtyard. Fang Yan could sense the presence of those people, just as they could sense his arrival. Not only that, if there was a particularly dangerous enemy, the entire small courtyard would be enveloped by electric fences. No one could even think of escaping from the courtyard. The Qin family had attached enough importance to Chaoyan Science and Technology and had equipped them with their most advanced technology and defensive measures. Because they had informed Lu Chaoga in advance, the 2 of them didn't encounter any obstruction when they entered. Other than confirming their identities at the entrance of the security booth. It was also the first time that Jiang Shangxin had come to the Chaoyan Research Institute. She sized up the legendary small courtyard with a face full of curiosity and said, "So this is the most mysterious underground research institute of Chaoyan Science and Technology. Aren't you afraid that I'll reveal the secret of this place by bringing me in?" Fang Yan looked at her with a smile and said, "Then just take it that I'm blind." Chapter 561. Fang Yan was not at all worried that Jiang Shangxin would reveal the secrets that she had seen, because it was impossible for her to see any secrets. The Chaoyan Underground Research Institute was divided into 7 studios, and each studio had an elite team that worked closely with each other. These teams were responsible for the safety of their own products and the technical results. Not to mention an outsider like Jiang Shangxin, even the people in the research institute would not know about their research projects or the latest results as long as they were not part of the same team. All the team leaders were only responsible to one person, and that was the absolute king of Chao Yen, Lu Chaoga. Lu Chaoga reasonably distributed the sales to the Lan family, the Lu family, and the Qin family, so that they had no choice but to stand on the same side as her. She was in charge of the recruitment of personnel, the management of the research institute, and the final decision on the products. When a new product came out, it was entirely up to her to decide whether or not it should be launched or when it should be launched. Even the other major shareholder, the Qin family, could not directly interfere with such matters. Unless they specifically wanted a product, they would only communicate with Lu Chaoga. Fang Yan was the third major shareholder of Chao Yen Technology, and also the most irresponsible shareholder. Other than knowing that Lu Chaoga was continuously transferring dividends to his account, he knew nothing about Chao Yen Technology. The reason why he brought Jiang Shangxin to the interior of Chao Yen Technology was because this was the safest place in Huaqing. He believed that even with Jiang Junling's capabilities, he would not be able to break into this place unless he mobilized a large number of troops. However, how could the troops cooperate with them to do such a thing? Jiang Shangxin glanced at Fang Yan shyly and pretended to grumble, "You're not blind. You know that it's hard for me to get out once I'm in here. On the other hand, if you bring me to a place like this, I won't be able to resist if you want to do anything to me. This is your territory, and I won't be able to cry out for help then." Fang Yan laughed and said, "How can you say this in reverse?" Jiang Shangxin was even more embarrassed. At that time, she pulled Fang Yan to the toilet and teased him, but she could not make him stay. Fang Yan's self-control was indeed much stronger than hers. As the two of them stood at the door, a short-haired woman in a white coat came out to welcome them. "Mr. Fang, hello." The short-haired woman looked at Fang Yan with a smile and took the initiative to greet Fang Yan. "You are Xiaoming." Fang Yan looked at the beautiful woman in front of him in shock and said in disbelief. Xiaoming was Lu Chaoga's secretary when she was the vice principal of Rosefinch High School. She had a good impression of Fang Yan back then. Later, when Lu Chaoga left Rosefinch to start her own business, Xiaoming was transferred to work in the principal's office. Some time ago, Lu Chaoga was betrayed by his assistant, so he transferred his former secretary, Xiao Meng, to work by his side. Now, Meng Xiaoying had become Lu Chaoga's new assistant. "It's me. Mr. Fang, you didn't expect to meet me here, did you?" Xiaomeng looked at Fang Yan with a smile, a simple and happy look. This girl was always so carefree and happy. "I didn't expect to meet you here," Fang Yan said. "Why, don't you work at the school anymore?" "After Principal Lu left the school, I have been in contact with Principal Lu. Some time ago, I heard that Principal Lu was sick, so I wanted to go see her. Principal Lu asked me if I was happy at work, and I said it was fine. Principal Lu asked me if I wanted to transfer to work by her side, and of course I was willing, so now I am Principal Lu's secretary again," Meng Xiaoying said proudly. Fang Yan also smiled and said, "Congratulations." "Humph, congratulating me means treating me to a good meal. After I followed Principal Lu, I found out that you are also a major shareholder of Chao Yen Technology, Mr. Fang. Although it is said that one should not show one's wealth, aren't you being too careful? Do you know how much money you have now?" Fang Yan thought about it and said, "I really don't know." "You," Meng Xiaoying was furious. "How could there be such an arrogant person?" "I really don't know," Fang Yan said with a bitter smile. "I spend very little money. And I rarely check my bank accounts. So this is how the rich live," Meng Xiaoying said with a click of her tongue. "But don't worry, I will help you calculate clearly in the future. Oh yes, Principal Lu called me and asked me to bring you to the Underground Research Institute." Meng Xiaoying looked at Jiang Shangxin, who was standing beside Fang Yan, with hostility, and said, "Come with me." "Thank you," Fang Yan said with a smile. Meng Xiaoying waved her hands generously and said, "What kind of relationship do we have? Why are you thanking me?" "Oh yes, Mr. Fang, when are you and Principal Lu getting married?" Fang Yan was stunned and asked, "Who said we are getting married?" Meng Xiaoying gritted her teeth and stared at Fang Yan and said, "You heartless fellow, the last time I went to visit Principal Lu, he said that you were living together. You actually never thought of getting married? What do you think Principal Lu is? You don't want to take responsibility after taking what you have, right? Let me tell you, I hate such irresponsible men the most. They are worse than beasts, they are the scum of the scum." Wait. Fang Yan hurriedly stopped her. "Do you know what my relationship with Principal Lu is?" "Of course I know. Aren't you already living together?" "You misunderstood. You call this a misunderstanding? You men really know how to pass the buck. I just don't understand, why would such a smart and beautiful woman like Principal Lu fall for you? If she wanted to find a partner, wouldn't all the men in the world come to her for her to choose?" "Meng Xiaoying, don't call my name, from today onwards, I don't know you anymore. Principal Lu and I don't have the kind of relationship you think, we are just pure, but very close friends. She is a very, very important woman to me, but she is not my woman. We didn't what? We didn't do anything." Fang Yan touched his nose and said. Jiang Shangxin stared at Fang Yan in bewilderment and said, "Fang Yan, don't tell me you are still a virgin. What do you know?" Fang Yan swept a glance at him and said, "I just want to give my first time to my future wife. I am not a casual man." "Then leave it to Principal Lu." Meng Xiaoying's expression softened a little. "Principal Lu is the most suitable woman for you. As for the others, Although Meng Xiaoying did not say it too clearly, Jiang Shangxin knew that that meant that the other women were not worthy. She was not worthy either. Fang Yan and Jiang Shangxin looked at each other. They did not want to lower themselves to the level of this immature girl. Under Meng Xiaoying's lead, they took the elevator down to the Underground Research Institute. The elevator was newly installed and required fingerprint and voice verification before it could be used normally. If someone with bad intentions wanted to use the elevator, even if they barged in and were discovered by the security personnel, they could immediately spray the knockout powder to cause the person to faint or even die. The Underground Research Institute had also been renovated once again. Some old things were removed and replaced with a large amount of titanium metal. The entire Underground Research Institute had become a gorgeous silver-white empire. Countless people dressed in white were walking back and forth in the transparent glass room. Everyone's expression was so infatuated and focused. "This is the work area," Meng Xiaoying said. Meng Xiaoying led Fang Yan and Jiang Shangxin through an alloy door and arrived at the resting area of the Underground Research Institute. Although they were underground, they could not feel the pollution of the air. The air and water that had been filtered by 13 air filtration nets was fresher and more delicious than the air outside. There was plenty of light and a large number of green plants planted in the basement. Some people were drinking coffee and chatting in the resting area, while others were exercising and jogging. Everything was the same as the life on the surface. If you did not see it with your own eyes, you would not be able to believe that you were in the underground world at this moment. Meng Xiaoying walked to the front of a white door and entered a password into the password box at the door. The electronic door slowly opened to both sides. "You need to enter the password for the first time," Meng Xiaoying said. She looked at Jiang Shangxin unhappily and said, "Place your hand on the identification area." "Identification area?" Jiang Shangxin asked doubtfully. "Why are you so stupid? It's where I entered the password just now. Isn't there a tablet below? Place your palm on it, and the computer system will automatically record your fingerprint. In the future, you don't need to enter the password when you go in and out, just place your palm on it and press it. Jiang Shangxi knew that this little lass was full of animosity towards her and did not want to talk much with her. She placed her palm on the tablet to record it. Recording successful. A mechanical voice sounded from the computer. Meng Xiaoying took the lead and entered the room. She introduced and said, "This is a room for engineers. All the settings are ready. You cannot purchase anything outside, but you can make a list of the things you need and hand it to our procurement staff." "Thank you," Jiang Shangxin said. The layout of the room was one bedroom and one living room. The room was very big, and so was the living room. It was mainly white, with some light green and yellow furniture complementing it. The overall layout was very cozy. This couldn't be compared to the house that Jiang Shangxin usually stayed in. However, they were in trouble now, and their lives were on the line. It wasn't the time to be picky. Meng Xiaoying looked at Fang Yan and said, "Mr. Fang, this is your first time here, right? Do you want me to bring you around?" "No need." Fang Yan rejected her. "I still have some things to say to Miss Jiang." Meng Xiaoying said helplessly, "Then I'll go and pour you a cup of coffee. Remember not to close the door." Fang Yan really wanted to knock her head. What is this little girl thinking in her head? She thought that they were going to have sex in this enclosed space. When he thought of the words dry firewood and blazing fire, he took another look at his surroundings. When he saw Shangxin, who was more beautiful than a flower, standing panting in front of him, Fang Yan suddenly felt that Meng Xiaoying's worries were not unfounded. Chapter 562. Meng Xiaoying went out and came back very quickly. She placed 2 cups of coffee in front of Fang Yan and Jiang Shangxin, looked at Fang Yan and asked, "Mr. Fang, do you guys want fruits? I'll bring you a fruit platter." Fang Yan grabbed her shirt and said, "I really don't need it. Just eat some. Eating fruits is good for one's skin. Although your skin is pretty good, your friend's skin is not good." Meng Xiaoying pointed at Jiang Shangxin and said. Jiang Shangxin had cried a few times today, and the makeup on her face was already ruined. Her hair and face were covered in dust, so her skin looked terrible. She doesn't need it either. Fang Yan pushed Meng Xiaoying out and said, "We'll look for you when we need you. Go and do your own things first, Mr. Fang, don't close the door, I'll come and look for you later." Clang, Fang Yan closed the door from the inside. Jiang Shangxin giggled and said, "If you close the door, won't she be very anxious outside?" "She's still a child," Fang Yan said. "She's afraid that there's something going on between us, right? Such a young child knows how to be loyal to her mistress. It seems that Lu Chaoge is indeed a very charming woman. It can be seen from the way the people around her treat her." Fang Yan thought about it and said, "She is a woman that I like and respect very much. It's not a good thing for a man to respect a woman." Jiang Shangxin said, "If you love her, do her. This is how a man should treat his woman." Fang Yan looked at Jiang Shangxin and said, "If you don't want to say anything, I'll go back first. Didn't you say that this is a difficult choice for me? You won't force me to make a decision." "I did say that," Fang Yan said. "But I'm worried that you won't be able to resist saying something. What happened today was too unforgettable. If your heart isn't strong enough, you might have nightmares at night." Fang Yan. Jiang Shangxin looked worried. Fang Yan patted her shoulder and said with a smile, "It doesn't matter. You should have a good rest first. I'll have someone send you some food." When Fang Yan got up and was about to leave, Shangxin grabbed onto his arm and asked, "Fang Yan, what about my mom?" "What do you mean?" "Jiang Junling knew that I was with you, but he was still willing to let me go to Paris. That was because he didn't want to pressure my mother too much." My mother controls some of the important businesses of the generals, and they don't wish for a small person like me to cause a huge upheaval in the family's businesses. I understand. Fang Yan nodded. You're afraid that because you didn't go to Paris, they'll do something to your mother. I don't think so. No matter how much they dislike you, it's impossible for them to deal with your mother because of you. Isn't that not worth it? What if I have evidence of their crimes? Jiang Shangxin asked with a trembling voice. At this moment, the cell phone in Jiang Shangxin's pocket rang. Jiang Shangxin took out her cell phone and said happily, "My mom is calling." She picked up the call and heard her mother, Li Yun's voice. "Shangxin, are you all right?" "Mom, I'm fine." Jiang Shangxin's eyes turned moist again. "Mom, I'm sorry, you have nothing to do with me. Take care of yourself, Mom, are you all right?" "I'm fine." Li Yun replied. "What can happen to me?" "All right, I'll stop talking. I'm hanging up." Jiang Shangxin wanted to say something else, but the line was already busy. Fang Yan said with a grave expression, "Your mom is in danger." She didn't even ask where I was. She didn't ask because she didn't want others to know. But they still did something to my mom. Jiang Shangxin said anxiously. "Fang Yan, can you help me save her? Don't be anxious." Fang Yan said. "I have the evidence of their crimes. As long as you haven't used it or they don't know that you have used it, your mom is safe." "Fang Yan, I don't know who else I can rely on now. Even my mom is under their control. The only person I can trust now is you." Jiang Shangxin took off her left earring and passed it to Fang Yan. "There is an encrypted chip in it. Jiang Zhuliu's criminal records are in it." Fang Yan didn't take the earring from her and said, "If I take the earring away now, you will definitely feel insecure. I'll leave the earring with you first. I'll look for you when I need it. But, can I take a look at the contents?" "Sure." Jiang Shangxin said. "But you need a computer." Fang Yan went out and called Meng Xiaoying over, asking her to prepare a computer. Meng Xiaoying saw the serious expression on Fang Yan's face. This time, she didn't say anything and hurried out to get the things that Fang Yan needed. Fang Yan pushed Meng Xiaoying out of the room again and closed the metal door. He took out the chip from the earring and inserted it into a special card slot. Then, he inserted the card slot into the computer and pressed the play button. Ding, the play failed. "I need a password," Jiang Shangxin said. FY123456. FY is the initials of your name. They can't possibly know that I will use your name to set up the password. Even if they get the chip, they can't open it. Fang Yan nodded and entered the verification number in the password box. Jiang Shangxin turned her face away with reddened eyes when she saw what Fang Yan did. She didn't want to look at the contents again. It was too cruel to herself every time. After a short buffer, the video popped up. Then, the sound of the wind came from the speakers. It was the sound of the sea breeze. Then, a face appeared. It was Jiang Fengxing's face. The scene that followed was clear and unfamiliar. Such a scene was completely within Fang Yan's prediction, or rather, within Fang Yan's imagination. "This is the content that I edited," Jiang Shangxin said in a hoarse voice. "How did you get it?" Fang Yan asked. "That day, he told me that he was going to fetch my father. I helped him prepare his clothes and tie. I cut off one of the buttons on his shirt and sewed the one with the camera function on. It was at his collar area," Jiang Shangxin said. "Did you already suspect him at that time?" Fang Yan asked. "Who can people like us really trust?" Jiang Shangxin had a bitter smile on her face. "At that time, I still had hopes for him. I wanted him to be my man and my husband. Even if they had 10,000 reasons to do so, he should reject me. I could accept that it was anyone, but I couldn't accept that it was him. When I saw my father's swollen body, I knew what they had done to it. At that time, I didn't want to believe it, or maybe I was subconsciously looking for reasons to absolve them. When I cut off that button from his body, when I saw the video from the beginning to the end, I knew what kind of man I had married. He wasn't a human, he was a ferocious wolf, a beast, a devil. I hated him and was afraid of him. I didn't dare to get close to him. I didn't want to share a bed with him. I didn't even want to see his face that always pretended to be affectionate. I was willing to sleep with any man in the world, but I wasn't willing to have any intimate actions with him. He was the most disgusting man in the world. Jiang Shangxin's voice became louder and louder, and her emotions became more and more agitated. Her face was pale and embarrassed, and her body was trembling slightly. This was a feeling of extreme hatred and extreme fear. When a woman married a man, it was the biggest gamble in her life. Someone won the gamble and she married a prince who treated her like a princess. Someone lost the gamble and she married a devil who ate people's hearts and livers. Fang Yan patted Jiang Shangxin's shoulder gently and said, "Evil people get what they deserve. Isn't the retribution already here?" Jiang Shangxin took out a tissue to wipe her eyes and said, "Yes, I must let them receive their retribution." Fang Yan took out the card slot and inserted the chip back into Jiang Shangxin's earring. He thoughtfully put the earring on Jiang Shangxin's ear and asked, "Do they know about the existence of this thing?" "They don't know about the existence of this video, but they are already suspicious of me. They suspect that I have something that is not beneficial to them. Everyone told me to be patient, to pretend that nothing had happened. Even my mother said the same thing. Since he is no longer around, why say these things and make everyone unhappy? But, I just can't do it. I can't face my father's death. I can't face this video. I have nightmares every night. In the dreams, my father's face is swollen from soaking in seawater. It is black and purple, and his eyes are about to fall out. I can't pretend that nothing happened. My performance was too obvious, and they were too smart. It is impossible that they didn't think of it." Fang Yan nodded and said, "Have a good rest here. Leave the rest to me." Jiang Shangxin nodded and looked at Fang Yan with her big, watery eyes. She said, "Okay. I believe you." Fang Yan smiled and carried his laptop, preparing to leave. Fang Yan. Jiang Shangxin suddenly rushed up and hugged Fang Yan's body tightly from behind. She hugged him tightly with all her strength. To this princess who used to be high and mighty, Fang Yan was her everything now. "Don't be like this." Fang Yan felt his mouth go dry. Virgins are capable of anything. Chapter 563. When Fang Yan walked out, Meng Xiaoying was still waiting at the door. "It's over already?" Meng Xiaoying asked. Fang Yan flicked her forehead and said, "What does a child know? Help me take care of her, I still have things to take care of." "Don't worry, I won't let her starve," Meng Xiaoying said impatiently. She didn't like to worry about Shangxin, and this attitude wouldn't change in a short time. "Mr. Fang, when will you treat me to a meal?" Fang Yan thought for a moment, then turned to look at Meng Xiaoying and said, "Eating is a small matter, any time is fine. Xiao Meng, you have to assist Principal Lu in his work, don't worry. I used to be Principal Lu's secretary, I know Principal Lu's personality and preferences, and also know what to do every day," Meng Xiaoying said. "You also have to pay attention to your own safety," Fang Yan said. The reason why Lu Chaoga's previous assistant betrayed her was because someone kidnapped her family. Even if Lu Chaoga would be on guard in the future, who could guarantee that something like this wouldn't happen again? Fang Yan was concerned about Lu Chaoge's safety, and also about Meng Xiaoying's safety. He didn't want anything to happen to the people around him. Safety. Meng Xiaoying looked at Fang Yan with a face full of confusion and said, "At that time, when Principal Lu asked me if I was willing to work by her side, she also told me to pay attention to my safety, and said that I might encounter some dangerous things." Teacher Fang, what kind of danger would you encounter? That is, someone might do something bad to Principal Lu, Fang Yan said. Is it kidnapping? Meng Xiaoying said with a look of understanding, I know. Back then, Hua Xia, the son of the richest man in Li, was kidnapped. Later, a lot of ransom was given. Let's just say so, Fang Yan said. He took out a pocket-sized white porcelain bottle and handed it to Meng Xiaoying, saying, "Keep this well, if you encounter danger, eat it." Thank you, Mr. Fang. What is this? Fang Yan waved his hand and said, "Take it. I hope I won't need to use it." All right. Meng Xiaoying put away the bottle and said, "Mr. Fang, I'll walk you out." Thank you, Fang Yan said. When Fang Yan returned home, Lu Chaoge was sitting in front of the French windows in the living room, working. Seeing that Fang Yan had returned, Lu Chaoge asked softly, "Has everything been arranged?" "It's arranged." Fang Yan nodded. He poured himself a glass of lemonade and walked behind Lu Chaoge. He watched as she skillfully manipulated various forms on the computer. Shouldn't these things be handled by the secretary? When the secretariat is done, send it to me. I need to approve it again, Lu Chaoge said. It's a habit I've developed in school. I'm always worried that I'll make a mistake in the accounts. Did you get anything today? Yes, I did. Fang Yan smiled and said, "No wonder the Jiang family has always been so wary of Jiang Shangxin and wanted to send her out. It turns out that she has important evidence of their crimes in her hands." You are right. If I had waited for her to look for me on her own, she might have already fallen into the hands of those people. If I let her go to France, she might not even be able to keep her life. Based on the way those people do things, it's impossible for them to allow a bomb like Jiang Shangxin to live a carefree life in a foreign country. What they want to do is to eliminate the root of the problem and get rid of all their worries in one go. What evidence? Evidence that her father-in-law killed her father. Lu Chaoge stopped what she was doing and remained silent for a long time. Then, she turned to look at Fang Yan and said, "Luckily, I met you." If Lu Chaoge hadn't met Fang Yan, would she have had the courage to resist the glorious Jiang family? If Lu Chaoge hadn't met Fang Yan, would she have had the ability to reject and resist the marriage with Jiang Zhulu? If Fang Yan hadn't met Lu Chaoge, would she have been Jiang Shangxin now? Because of Fang Yan, because Lu Chaoge and Jiang Zhulu had completely broken up, the Jiang family facilitated the marriage between the two families in order to curry favor with the Jiang family. In other words, what Jiang Shangxin was going through now might be what Lu Chaoge was supposed to be going through. Even though they had taken too much away from her. Fang Yan patted Lu Chaoge's shoulder and said, "I should be the one saying this. Luckily, I met you. If not, my life would be very different from how it is now. You have done too much for me, so don't say thank you in the future. Because I have never said thank you to you." I know. That's why I have never said thank you. Lu Chaoge nodded. Do you need me to do anything? Fang Yan nodded and said, "It's more suitable for you to do this. I will go upstairs to take a shower first. We can discuss this later." Okay. Lu Chaoge nodded. Fang Yan returned to his room, took a shower, and changed into the casual clothes he usually wore for practicing martial arts. He walked to the balcony and was about to make a pot of tea to rest when he saw a familiar face at the entrance of the courtyard. Ho Zhendong, the martial arts fanatic. Fong Yan panicked and ran downstairs hurriedly. Fong Yan ran to the entrance of the courtyard in his cotton slippers. He looked at the smiling martial arts addict and asked, "How did you find your way here?" "I want to find someone. That person can forget about running away." The martial arts addict smiled. "Other than the elusive black dragon, who else can I not find? Didn't I find your senior brother, Green Dragon Mo Chingdi? Didn't he have to fight with me in the end? Why don't you find the divine dragon? Force him to fight with you. I can't beat him." The martial arts addict said, "I don't have the confidence to beat him now." Fong Yan sneered and said, "So you always pick on the weak. You only fight with people that you think you can beat and stay away from those that you can't beat. Is this how you get your success rate?" "No, I only fight with people that I want to fight. When I feel that I'm on par with the divine dragon, I challenge him. I enjoy the process of fighting, not the process of being beaten." Fong Yan didn't know whether to laugh or cry, saying, "Who wants to enjoy the process of being beaten? If you're not willing, then others are. And I'm willing. I might win, but you might not lose." The martial arts addict looked at Fong Yan seriously and said, "Kid, you make me feel danger." Qi Ning, Fong Yingying and the others who were hiding in the courtyard saw Fong Yan go downstairs and run to the door to talk to a strange-looking man. They immediately surrounded him from several directions. The martial arts addict laughed and said, "These are some good fighters. 2 of them are quite good, just enough for me to warm up." Fong Yan waved his hand and said to Qi Ning, Fong Yingying and the others, "Disperse. He's my friend." "I don't have friends," the martial arts addict said. "If the 2 of us become friends, I won't be able to beat you to death." Fong Yan was speechless. He wanted to beat this old bastard to death on the spot. Qi Ning waved his hand, and the group of brothers beside him automatically dispersed to the sides and returned to their posts. However, he and Fong Yingying were worried about Fong Yan's safety, so they still stood at the side and didn't go too far. "Senior Ho, why did you come all the way here?" Fong Yan asked helplessly. "Nothing much, I just came to give you a reminder." "What reminder?" Fong Yan asked even though he already knew the answer. He really didn't want to waste time on pointless fighting and killing. He was a pacifist. "Tonight at 8:00, we'll meet at the top of One Sword Peak, the place where you fought with the Thousand Leaves Army. You haven't forgotten, right?" "Didn't I refuse?" Fong Yan said. "But I didn't accept your refusal. But I also didn't accept your challenge. See, you're being stubborn again, aren't you? Senior Ho, just let me go. You can find someone else, anyone else. If you can't find them, I'll think of a way to help you find them." "No, it'll be you. You've already successfully aroused my desire for you." Fong Yan didn't have any desire for the martial fanatic. "Not everyone is worth my time. I'm not feeling well today." "You're in a very good state of mind, it's impossible for you to not feel well. Besides, if you can't even endure a little bit of difficulty, how can you be considered an elite of the martial world?" The martial fanatic saw Fong Yingying standing at the door and said, "That fatso is quite cute." As he spoke, he suddenly raised his foot and stomped it on the ground. Crack, a crack appeared on the ground. That crack was wrapped in an incomparably violent strength chi and attacked Fong Yingxiong. Fong Yan stomped on the ground and created another crack to block it. Boom! 2 white forces collided in front of Fong Yingying, then exploded with an ear-piercing sound. At the point of contact, cement and gravel flew everywhere, forming a small crater. That was the result of 2 completely different forces attacking each other. Qi Ning stared at the crack on the ground with a surprised expression, feeling that the scene in front of him went against everything he knew. What is this? Could it be that what he's come into contact with is just the tip of the iceberg, and the true martial arts of the martial world, is this kind of move that kills people without a trace. Fang Yingying froze for a moment, then cursed loudly, pointing at the martial fanatic and roared, "You old bastard, are you jealous of my handsome appearance, so you immediately used a killing move to take this young master's life? Fortunately, this junior martial uncle is quick-witted, otherwise this young master would have been killed by you. Where did this ugly monster come from? What's so great about knowing a little bit of martial arts? Do you dare to fight me, the junior martial uncle, for 300 rounds? Watch me, the junior martial uncle, skin you alive, pull out your tendons, and let you die without a burial ground." The martial fanatic sneered and said, "That's exactly what I'm planning to do." Fang Yingying pointed at the martial fanatic and laughed, saying, "Junior martial uncle, this ugly monster wants to challenge you. Don't hold back, beat him until even his mother can't recognize him." Fang Yan stared deeply at Fang Yingying and said, "The ugly monster you're talking about is one of Hua Xiao's 7 fanatics, the martial fanatic." Chapter 564. Hua Xiao's 7 addicts. Fang Yingying stared at Hou Zhendong, the martial addict, and shook his head. "They don't look alike." "What do you think he should look like?" Fang Yan snappily asked. "What era is it now? Does this guy still judge a book by its cover? Does he have to look like me to become a martial arts master? Does he have to look like Bai Xiao to become a rising star in Neijiang? This doesn't make sense. A strange person with a strange appearance. What kind of strange person is he? He's Hua Xiao's 7 addicts, a legendary figure. Even if he's not as handsome and elegant as junior martial uncle, there's no need to look like an overfed middle-aged uncle. I can't accept it, I can't accept it at all. We, the people of the Appearance Association, have a strict and persistent pursuit of beauty. We like all beautiful things, like handsome men and beautiful women. The martial addict in my heart is not like this." Fang Yan couldn't understand. How could Fang Yingying so easily say something like, "We in the Appearance Association"? Does he not look at himself in the mirror? If he did, how could he live such a carefree, innocent, lively, and simple-minded life? 9 feet tall, jade face, long robe. Holding a red tasseled spear made of dragon scale stone, or a startling rainbow sword made by Master Wu Yazi. His long hair draped over his shoulders, his long robe flapping noisily in the wind. Just by standing there, he exudes a supreme majesty that can drive away wolves and tigers. This is the martial arts fanatic of the 7 fanatics of China. Fang Yingying looked at Hou Zhendong with a wronged expression, feeling like his idol had been shattered. How can he be like this? How can he be like this? Is he worthy of the title martial addict? Fang Yan was a little regretful for saving him just now. It would have been great if Hou Zhendong's cracking technique directly killed him. The martial addict laughed and pointed at Fang Yingying. "This boy is simple and cute. Who is he to you?" "My martial nephew," Fang Yan said. "Martial nephew?" The martial addict asked in confusion. "Who is your master?" "Azure Dragon, don't underestimate your enemy." "What a pity," the martial addict sighed and looked at Fang Yingying as if he was looking at a 1,000-year-old treasure. "It's not a pity, it's not a pity." Fang Yan hurriedly said, "Senior, if you like it, feel free to take it away. I can still make the decision on this matter. I only hope that Senior doesn't find trouble with me and I will be eternally grateful. A gentleman doesn't take what others like." The martial addict declined. "Not good. Not good at all. No one likes him, you can just take him," Fang Yan said with endless hidden bitterness. "Besides, what kind of gentleman are you?" The martial addict stared at Fang Yan with a strange smile and said, "You have insulted me. All the more reason for you to accept my challenge, Fang Yan boy. Tonight at 8:00 at the summit of the One-Sword Mountain, I will fight you to the death." "Senior, don't be like this. Aren't you forcing us to buy and sell? If you still feel angry, you can scold me again, then it's settled. The martial addict Ho Zhendong interrupted Fang Yan, looked at Fang Yan and said, "Boy, if you don't come tonight, my cracking turtle technique won't only be used on that little fatso." His line of sight passed through the door and looked at Lu Chaoga, who was standing under the eaves of the corridor, looking outside. He said, "Hiding a beauty in a golden house, what a heavenly life. But, if the beauty gets hurt by someone, it wouldn't be pretty, would it? Is this a threat?" "Think what you want," the martial addict casually said. He put his hands in his pockets and staggered outside like a loafer. He was even singing some strange lyrics, persuading the king to drink wine and listen to the song of Yu Yu, dispelling the king's sorrows and dancing. In Qin's tyranny broke the country, heroes rose up to fight. Since ancient times, the saying doesn't lie. Success or failure, rise or fall in a split second. How about drinking wine and listening to the military report? Fang Yan listened carefully. It was a passage from Farewell My Concubine. Pft! Fang Yan spat on the ground. How unlucky! Fang Yingying and Qining walked in front of Fang Yan. Fang Yingying asked, "Junior martial uncle, is he really a martial addict?" Fang Yan used the tip of his foot to point at the crack on the ground and said, "Do you think a person can make the ground shake like this just by stomping their feet? Then why do you want me to go with him?" Fang Yingying angrily asked. "I'm not afraid of a godlike opponent, but I'm afraid of a pig-like teammate. He's been pestering me for a long time, wanting me to fight with him. I've rejected him so many times, but you're the one who messed things up. If you go with him, it'll save me a lot of trouble." "Junior martial uncle, why don't you want to fight with him?" Fang Yingying asked. "Why should I fight with him?" Fang Yan asked in return. "Isn't it natural for us martial artists to spar and learn from each other to improve together?" Fang Yingying asked. "Let go of victory and defeat, let go of honor and disgrace, don't be arrogant if you win, don't be angry if you lose, isn't that what we should do?" Fang Yan looked at Fang Yingying with a surprised expression and said, "I didn't think you could say something like that, you've really matured a lot. How about, you go and fight with the martial addict for me tonight?" Fang Yingying desperately shook his chubby head, saying, No, I can't. If I go, I'll be beaten half to death by the martial addict. At that time, I'll be losing face for Shifu and junior martial uncle. Didn't you say to let go of victory and defeat, honor and disgrace? Now you're afraid of losing face. I'm asking others to let go. Don't those old monks always ask others to let go, while I'm sitting in the heart of Buddha? Qining stared at the martial addict's back for a long time, then asked, "Is this the strongest expert of the martial world?" "You can say so." Fang Yan smiled and said, "The martial addict, one of the 7 addicts of Hua Xia. If he wasn't obsessed with martial arts, how could he obtain such a title?" Qining sighed deeply, saying, "The road ahead is long." Fang Yan patted his shoulder, saying, "We will continue to search from top to bottom. There are no cliffs in the path of martial arts, let's cherish it as we go." When Fang Yan returned to the courtyard, Lu Chaoga showed a worried expression and asked, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine." Fang Yan smiled and said. "An old friend, he came here to find me for a fight, but I refused." Lu Chaoga nodded, then softly asked, "What do you want to eat?" "I'll cook." Because there were often street racers racing on Single Sword Mountain, 2 years ago, there was an extremely serious traffic accident. 2 luxury cars collided at the same time at a curve and rolled into a cliff by the side of the road, destroying the cars and killing the people inside. Because the cars caught fire and exploded in the process of falling off the cliff, when the rescue team found the wreckage of the cars, the people inside the cars had already been burnt to a crisp. The owners of the 2 luxury cars both had powerful backgrounds, so when their relatives cried bitterly, they naturally vented their anger on the administrative department of Flower City. It was said that because of this incident, the head and deputy head of the Department of Traffic at that time were both removed from their positions, and a large number of the higher-ups under them were investigated. The government of Flower City was also quite wronged. If your son wanted to race, who could stop him? Besides, even if they didn't race on Single Sword Mountain, they would still go to Double Sword Mountain, Three Sword Mountain, Four Sword Mountain, and Heaven Sword Mountain. Who knew when something would happen? In order to vent their anger, the government of Flower City ordered people to set up several huge stone roadblocks at the entrance of the mountain. Cars couldn't be driven up, so anyone who wanted to go up the mountain could only walk. Who did Single Sword Mountain offend? This method was indeed barbaric and effective. Single Sword Mountain's racing program every night was cancelled, and those street racers went to harm other cities and mountains. The Volkswagen stopped at the foot of the mountain, and Fong Yen opened the door and got out. After the Snake Lord parked the car, he quietly followed behind Fong Yen. His walking posture was very strange. He always touched the ground with his toes first, and his heels almost didn't touch the ground. Because of this, he almost didn't make any sound when he walked. He was like a venomous snake slithering in the grass. "You don't have to follow me," Fong Yen said without turning his head. The Snake Lord didn't reply. His figure flashed and disappeared into the grass behind Fong Yen. The Snake Lord should live in the dark like a snake. When he discovered the enemy, he should suddenly jump out and give the enemy a fatal blow. Fong Yen still decided to accept the challenge of the martial arts fanatic. It wasn't for winning or losing, and he wasn't worried about honor or disgrace. That was completely bullshit. He was here to win. Who didn't want to win? He understood the martial arts fanatic. Since the martial arts fanatic was a fanatic, it proved that he was willing to do anything for the sake of martial arts. When he took the boat down the Pearl River, he used the witness to test his strength. When he said that it would be harmful to Lu Chaoga, he wasn't just saying it. Fong Yen wasn't afraid of the martial arts fanatic, but he was afraid of trouble. He didn't want the martial arts fanatic to follow him like a ghost, and there was no better way to solve it other than to beat him down and make him surrender. Fong Yen sneaked out, and didn't let Fong Yingying and Qi Ning know. In order not to worry Lu Chaoga, he didn't even drive the BMW at home. Fong Yen was very familiar with the destination, so he passed through the dark mountain forest with ease. 3 years ago, he fought with the Japanese sword god, Chiba Bin, at the top of the One-Sword Peak. That battle made him famous in Jianghu, and it also changed his relationship with Chiba Bin, who was both an enemy and a friend. However, he didn't expect that Chiba Bin would choose to end his life in such a decisive way. He chose to leave when he was at the peak of his martial arts, and became a god in the eyes of the Japanese swordsman. For 3 years, Fong Yen hadn't been here. However, he didn't forget this place at all. When Fong Yen arrived at the top of the One-Sword Peak, a man in a black robe was already standing there with a smile, like an uncle next door who came out for a stroll after a meal. When the martial arts fanatic saw Fong Yen coming out, he grinned and said, "I knew you'd come." "Why?" "Because there's hatred in your eyes that can't be suppressed." The martial arts fanatic said in a clear voice, "Fong Yen, no matter who you hate, take it out on me tonight." Fong Yen wanted to turn around and run. Why did this middle-aged man always sound so wretched when he spoke? Chapter 565. Tonight, I will vent all my hatred on you. Who are you? Are you a beauty? Fong Yen only wanted to say one word to the martial fanatic, dream on. Fong Yen had fought against the Japanese sword god, and when the battle was about to end, he suffered a tragic attack. Because the enemy's artillery was too fierce, the top of One-Sword Peak was almost flattened. 3 years had passed, and the hillside was still flat, but the burnt grass had once again sprouted, and the burnt branches had once again grown new trunks. They grew vigorously, as if they were humans. With the grass and branches on the peak, there was not much change compared to 3 years ago, but the people were no longer the old friends from 3 years ago. The soul of Chiba being returned to heaven, and was he still practicing swordsmanship every day? Fang Yan knew that there was too much resentment hidden in his heart, and that there was too much hostility in his body. He was gentle and courteous, and welcomed people with a smile. But when would he be able to avenge his father's murder? When would the murderer receive the punishment he deserved? Every night before he went to sleep, he would blame himself for letting the bad guy live one more day. Therefore, Lu Chaoge could see the anger in his heart, and the martial fanatic Ho Zhendong could see the murderous intent in his heart. Murderous intent could also be turned into fighting spirit, into the courage to fight in the face of death. He was a refined gentleman with extraordinary taste in clothes, but he was also a gloomy and ruthless beast that could tear a human apart at any time. The English poet Siegfried Sassoon once wrote this immortal epigram, "In my heart, there is a tiger sniffing the rose." In the depths of everyone's heart, there is a tiger living, but outside the tiger's den, there are still roses growing. Rosefinch Secondary was Fang Yan's rose, Lu Chaoge was Fang Yan's rose, and everything beautiful and peaceful was Fang Yan's rose garden. However, a tiger was a tiger after all, and how could a tiger not want to fight? How could it not eat people? He wanted to fight. He wanted to fight more than anyone else. Since even Lu Chaoge could see it, Ho Zhendong, the martial arts fanatic, did not find it strange at all when he saw Fang Yan. He looked at the martial addict with a smile and said, "Therefore, I have to thank you for giving me such a chance to vent my anger. I like to fight with angry people." The martial addict said, "Because only angry people will disregard everything. At that time, you will truly understand the preciousness of life, live or die. You are a philosopher. Every madman has the potential to become a philosopher. Those who like me call me martial fanatic, and those who don't like me call me martial madman," martial fanatic said with a smile. He glanced around and said, "It's dark and there are only a few spectators." There was no heated discussion in the city, no tens of thousands of people watching, no cheers, and no applause. Compared to the battle between you and the Japanese sword god Chiba 3 years ago, it was too simple and shabby. Do you feel very disappointed? "I'm a warrior, not an actor," Fang Yan said. "The fewer the people, the better, that way we can fight to our heart's content." "That's exactly what I want." The martial addict clapped. "Fighting is a matter between two people. What's the point of having a bunch of useless people chatter on the side?" Before the martial addict finished, he raised his right foot and stomped down on a rock on the ground. Bam! The top of the hard rock was stomped into a deep groove. The rock inside the groove had already turned to dust when he exerted force. Rumble, a strong airflow gushed out and headed in Fang Yan's direction. Wherever the air current passed, a deep crack appeared. The grass and rocks that came into contact with the air current either broke in half or crumbled into pieces. As if the air current had eyes, it followed the direction where Fang Yan was standing. As Fang Yan retreated, it continued to chase. As Fang Yan continued to retreat, it continued to chase. The air current was strong and fierce, as if there was no end to it. As Fang Yan took a step to the side, the martial addict stomped his foot. A second powerful air current shamelessly rushed towards him. Chi chi chi, the air current screeched, giving off the sound of a sharp blade cutting through flesh. Rumble, it was as if there was a fire dragon flying underground, tearing holes in the hard ground one after another. Fang Yan had nowhere to hide. As he retreated, he pushed off the ground with the tip of his toes and leaped into the air. The martial addict was overjoyed, shouting, "Brat, you've been tricked." While saying so, he punched with both fists. Boom boom boom, the martial addict threw over a dozen punches in a single breath. A dozen blades of air appeared in the sky. The dozen blades of air were raised up high, as if a dozen giants were controlling them, giving off a blinding light in the darkness of the night. They either slashed horizontally or vertically, forming an impenetrable wall of lightning. Like a thunderbolt, it flew towards Fang Yan, even the air itself was being burned by it. Cracking cart. The air current was like a tortoise's shell, creating countless cracks. Every crack carried a powerful force that attacked all the creatures the cracks could reach. What was different was that the patterns on the tortoise's back were messy and there were many of them. The air current was scattered, making it hard to form a dragon. But the martial addict's cracking cart could not only combine the air current into one, it could also transform into a dragon, killing without leaving a trace. The cracking cart was inspired by the #1 assassin of the Qin dynasty, Guiyuan Tang, who saw a tortoise drying its shell 1,000 years ago. He combined it with his family's origin returning Qi scripture to create this more lethal cracking cart. The cracking cart relied on the air current to kill, first injuring the internal organs, then showing signs on the skin. For example, the skin would break or the pores would bleed. The Guiyuan Tang used this technique to kill countless people, striking fear into everyone's hearts. This technique was also called King of Hell's Foot. If King of Hell wants you dead at midnight, who would dare to keep you alive until midnight? The Guiyuan Tang was later hired by Chu's wealthiest merchant, Chu Mo, to assassinate the King of Qin, but was killed by the King of Qin's generals, Wang Jian and his son. The King of Qin was furious and ordered for the Guiyuan clan to be executed. In the end, the Guiyuan clan disappeared overnight, without a trace. The cracking cart was lost from then on. But no one knew how the martial addict, Hou Zhendong, inherited this technique. When he became famous, the name of the cracking cart was once again known to the world. Once, when Fang Yan was drinking with the old drunkard, Mo Qingdi, the old drunkard commented on all the techniques in the world, especially telling Fang Yan about the cracking cart's origins and its various mystical aspects. He also reminded Fang Yan that if he encountered an expert with the cracking cart, he must not fly into the air. At that time, Fang Yan thought it was strange, cracking cart was mainly used for ground attacks. Yet the old drunkard did not allow Fang Yan to fly into the air. Wasn't he just standing there and letting others crack him? How could there be such a thing in the world? Now Fang Yan understood, cracking cart can not only be used with the feet, it can also be used with the fists. Comparatively speaking, the frequency of using the earth fissure technique to attack with the strength of his feet was far inferior to that of using his fists. Fang Yan and the martial addict met 3 times. He saw him use fairy flowers once and cracking cart twice. Those 2 times made Fang Yan think that he was showing off his strength. Only now did Fang Yan realize that he was actually hiding his strength. Every time he used his feet to perform the crack technique, it would create a cognitive memory in the minds of others. It would make them subconsciously think that he only used his feet to perform this ultimate technique, and they only needed to be wary of his feet. This sly old dog. Fang Yan cursed in his mind. He suspected that the reason why the martial addict went to find him this afternoon was partly to urge him to attend the banquet tonight, but also to continue to numb him. What the hell? Fang Yan's body flew into the air. His old strength has been used up, but new strength has not been generated. Without any strength to support himself, his body can only fall. But, if he falls, he will be cut in half by the cracking cart below. The Taiji heart spun madly, the state of Taiji was fully activated. In Fang Yan's mind, the crisscrossing blades of qi turned into dozens of flickering red lines. They sealed off all the routes that Fang Yan could take to move forward, backward, left, or right. Fong Yan was like a sparrow caught in an electric net. When the net came down on him, his body would be riddled with holes, and the blades of qi would cut him into pieces. Of course he couldn't just sit and wait for death. Fong Yan's body made a 360-degree turn in the air. His feet used the triangular plum blossom steps in the air. As long as he used the steps, his body would be able to stay in the air. His right hand swung out, drawing one arc after another in the air. Taiji horsetail whisk. He wanted to sweep away the blades of qi like how he would sweep away a horsetail whisk. His palms smoothly reached into the gap between the crisscrossing blades of qi. When he stirred and tried to stir the clouds, countless enormous streams of air suddenly gathered towards his arm. The wind howled. Not good, Fong Yan panicked. Blade array. This is the cracking cart, blade array. The martial addict casually threw a dozen punches and created a dozen or so qi blades. The dozen or so qi blades formed a saber array that was balanced internally. Fong Yan's hand reached in, wanting to wipe out the blades of qi. But he didn't know that his action broke the internal balance of the blade array, drawing all the air currents towards his body. Fong Yan felt a burning pain in his arm. He wanted to pull his hand out of the blade array, but it was already too late. His sleeves caught fire, and the flames spread to his upper body with a whoosh. Boom! With a loud explosion, Fong Yan's body flew backwards. Like a wild bird without a home, like a duck with a broken string. Crack! His body landed heavily on the hard, uneven ground. Countless weeds and branches were flattened by him, and his body slid on the slippery grassland. Clang! His head hit the hard rock, and only then did he avoid sliding into the bottomless abyss of One Sword Peak. Chapter 566. There was no moon in the sky, but there was a star in the distant sky. The star was sitting in the corner of the dark sky, lonely like the Snake Lord at this time. The Snake Lord was lying on a flat rock, looking at the star in boredom. Because apart from that star, he really did not know what else to see. The mountain was black, the trees were black, everything in front of him was black. The Snake Lord actually liked colors. Even when he raised snakes, he liked to raise those colorful poisonous snakes, such as dark red or purple. Because his sister said that the poisonous snakes of that color looked very naughty. Yes, naughty. Although he didn't know what naughty was. Maybe it was naughty when he came back from the mountain and walked into his dilapidated courtyard, when his sister suddenly jumped from behind and blindfolded him to let him guess who she was. Other than that, he really didn't know what other people and things around him were related to these two words. His life was boring and monotonous, and the only color was his sister. Unfortunately, where was she now? The Snake Lord didn't go to see the duel between Fong Yan and the martial arts addict, even though he was very interested in it. However, since Fong Yan didn't let him follow, and since he felt that he should hide in the dark and become a poisonous snake that could jump out at any time to devour those conspirators and evildoers, then he would be a poisonous snake dutifully. Who asked him to lose an eye? Who asked him to hold on to his snake eye? The Snake Lord felt very lonely. Whether it was killing people or being chased, he felt that there was no highlight in life. Sister, he missed his sister very much. He and his sister often didn't talk for a whole day, but as long as he could see her, he felt that life was very full and perfect. Crack, crack, the sound of something rubbing against the grass reached his ears. Was it a rabbit that accidentally broke in, or a gray bird that liked to get close to people and cause trouble, or his old friend, a bamboo snake? The Snake Lord listened carefully and then confirmed one thing: it was a poisonous snake, because he smelled the unique cool stench of a poisonous snake. And the rhythm of its movement was exactly the same as the way a poisonous snake moved when it swung its tail. Whoosh! A green-striped object leaped up and pounced towards his face. The Snake Lord lay there motionless. He didn't dodge or even reach out to grab the snake lord. Sure enough, this was the most commonly seen bamboo snake in the forest. Agile and slightly poisonous. Once the poisonous fangs are pulled out, they can become an edible delicacy. Of course, the Snake King never ate snakes. Just like how humans don't eat humans. He was the king of snakes. How could he eat his own people? The Snake Lord could see the bamboo snake's body, the outline of its head, its cold eyes, and its slightly open mouth. The Snake Lord opened his mouth. When the bamboo snake saw a hole to crawl into, it immediately rushed towards the Snake Lord's slightly open mouth. Caw, the Snake Lord closed his mouth. Then, the head of the bamboo leaf snake was swallowed into his mouth, and its tail struggled desperately outside his mouth. His teeth just happened to bite on the bamboo leaf's 7 inches. He didn't use any strength to avoid biting off the head of the bamboo leaf snake. He was not careless either, in case the bamboo leaf snake suddenly escaped or burrowed into his stomach. Just the right amount of force. Slap, 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 the snake swung its body with all its might. Its tail slapped the Snake Lord's face, forehead, and body again and again. It felt fear. The aura of this person made it feel close and dangerous. The Snake Lord still lay there motionlessly, letting the bamboo leaf snake hit him. He liked this game. He used to play it when he was with his sister. At this moment, the faint starlight overhead was covered, and a black figure appeared on the big rock that the Snake Lord was lying on. The Snake Lord stared at the black shadow in front of him. Because he was so obsessed, he forgot that there was a bamboo leaf snake in his mouth. Whoosh, the bamboo leaf snake exerted force and smoothly burrowed into the Snake Lord's stomach through his throat. The Snake Lord was still unmoved. He stared at the black shadow as if he was possessed. The long black hair, the thin cheeks, and the pupils that were brighter than the stars in the sky. There was also the crescent mark on her forehead. When she first started raising snakes, a poisonous snake jumped out of its nest and bit her between the eyebrows. In a panic, she stretched out her hand to pull the snake's tail out. In the end, she tore off a piece of flesh between her eyebrows. This incident had always troubled him, and he felt very guilty about his sister. If he hadn't been so reckless, his sister would have been even more beautiful. Of course, his sister was now like a fairy. "Sister?" the Snake Lord asked in a hoarse voice. His eyes were wet, and his throat was blocked. He was like a child who had been wronged and didn't know how to complain to his elders. Although he was his sister's brother, it was always the older brother who took care of his sister in daily life. "You still like to play this game?" the Black Shadow said softly. "I like it," the Snake Lord said. "I only know how to play this game. Every time I miss you, I play this game. I was the one who let that snake out, and here I was wondering why it was so bold. Normal poisonous snakes wouldn't dare to come close to me," the Snake Lord said with a proud expression. "I've met Shifu, he personally crowned me as the new Snake Lord. When you weren't here, I was already a true Snake Lord." "You've already been a true Snake Lord," the Black Shadow said. "In my heart, you've always been the best snake breeder." "It's not the same. This is not the same," the Snake Lord shook his head. The Snake Lord's bloodline is passed down from generation to generation. Only when the old Snake Lord is crowned can I become the new Snake Lord. "Sister, when I die, I'll crown you as the new Snake Lord." "No, you can be the Snake Lord whenever you want. I can crown you as the Snake Lord right now." The Snake Lord jumped up from the rock and said, "Come, sister, I'll crown you as the new Snake Lord. I'm willing to give the position of Snake Lord to you." The Black Shadow shook his head and said, "I don't want to be the Snake Lord. I only want to be the Snake Lord's little sister." The Snake Lord opened his mouth wide and smiled. His ugly face gave off the impression of being honest and sincere. The black shadow lightly stroked the Snake Lord's missing eye socket inside. Big brother, did you also offer the Snake Lord's eye to someone else? It's fine, the Snake Lord replied with a smile. At the time, I almost died, but I couldn't stop worrying. I didn't know how you were, I didn't know if you were still alive, I couldn't accept it, but now that I see you again, I know how correct my choice was. Fortunately, I offered my Snake Lord's eye, otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to see you again. What about Shifu? Is Shifu dead? Yes, Shifu is dead. He gave the Snake Lord's eye to someone else, as well as his life to his master. This is the fate of snake slaves. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see Shifu again. I didn't get to see him one last time. Big brother, what are you doing here? I'm here to watch over him. Watch over what? Watch over my master. The master I offered the Snake Lord's eye to, he's fighting with a very powerful expert. I want to be there to protect him so that he doesn't get killed. Because if he dies, I won't be able to live either. If I die, I won't be able to see you again. The Snake Lord grinned, revealing a mouthful of yellow teeth. I didn't expect to see you here. Even if I die now, I won't have any regrets. Big brother, the black shadow reached out and hugged the Snake Lord who was standing there like a fool. Big brother, I'm not dead, you can't die either. How can I die? I won't die. Let's go back to Xiangxi together. We'll hide in the mountains and never come out again. The people outside are too scary, even scarier than the venomous snakes we raised. The Snake Lord's body tensed up. This hug made him feel a bit strange. In the past, when he hugged his sister, his body would always be very relaxed, and even his breathing would be very calm and steady. They were like the closest family in the world. Who would have any thoughts other than kinship toward their sister? But now, the Snake Lord was very nervous, his heart was beating very fast. He felt that something was different from before, but he didn't know what was different. Perhaps it had been a long time since they last met, or perhaps it had been a long time since they hugged. The Snake Lord seemed to have remembered something and asked, "Right, little sister, are you all right? Did they make things difficult for you? How did you escape?" "I'm fine," the black shadow said. "Big brother, I'm fine, I'm living very well, that's good." The Snake Lord grinned like a big toad that was moving its mouth. "It's good that you're fine, little sister, it's good that you're fine. Hurry up and go back. Go back immediately." "Big brother, I can't go back. Why can't you go back?" the Snake Lord asked. "Hurry up and go back. Go back to Xiangxi and wait for me there. I'll take back my Snake Lord's eye and go back to Xiangxi to find you. Don't let them catch you again, they'll definitely come out to find you." "Big brother, they won't find me." "Why?" "Because, in a place where the Snake Lord couldn't see, a silver poisonous needle appeared between the black shadow's fingers. The black shadow hugged the Snake Lord tightly with one arm, while the other hand stabbed the needle into the Snake Lord's neck. The Snake Lord's body trembled violently, then his consciousness became hazy. His body softly lay in the black shadow's arms, trying to open his eyes, but his eyelids were trembling, and he couldn't do anything. He really wanted to open his eyes to take a good look at his sister, to see this unbelievable scene, because he used too much strength. Blood seeped out of his eyes. "Little sister," he called out weakly. Chapter 567. Pain. A tearing pain. Fang Yan touched his head with his hand. There was a large amount of sticky liquid on his palm. Just as Fang Yan had expected, his head was broken and he was bleeding. Smart people were cool like this, everything was within their calculations. Including being beaten like a dog. Fang Yan quickly touched his face again, the red liquid on his hand stained his face. This made it impossible for him to tell if his face was injured or not. "I hope I'm not disfigured," Fang Yan prayed in his heart. He supported himself with one hand, and his body leaped straight into the air. When he fell, he was already on his toes. Ho Jindong, the martial fanatic, did not follow up with another attack. He stood still and looked at Fang Yan, saying, "Kid, you're too careless." Fang Yan nodded, saying, "Indeed, I was too careless." "You're very strong, much stronger than I thought." The martial fanatic smiled, saying, "You're not weak either. To be able to take a fatal blow from my saber array without losing an arm or a leg, you can be considered one of the top figures of the younger generation. A man who can fight against Emo Qingdi the Azure Dragon, how could he be a simple man?" The martial fanatic's smile froze. He angrily said, "Bastard kid, what are you saying? Are you praising me or insulting me? What do you mean by a man who can fight against Emo Qingdi the Azure Dragon? How could he be a simple man? Emo Qingdi and I are of the same generation, we're opponents of the same level. Why is it that fighting against him is a great honor? Heroes are gone, masters are hard to find, do you understand this feeling?" "I do." Fang Yan nodded. "Otherwise, you wouldn't have come to find me. You sure know how to flatter yourself." The martial fanatic smiled. "My cracking technique is not bad, right? The first time I met you, you broke my fairy offering flower, so I wanted to make you suffer. The next few times I met you, I wanted to drag you into a pit. Every time I use my feet, I'll make you lose your ability to judge. You'll think that I only know how to use my feet. I didn't expect you to fall for it. You're not as smart as that little girl said." "Little girl?" Fang Yan was stunned. The martial addict looked at Fang Yan with a resentful expression and said, "You're really cruel and unscrupulous. You've forgotten the old one after you got a new one. The first time we met, you were drinking tea with the girl at the tea house by the Pearl River. It's only been a few days. When I went to look for you today, you were with another girl. Has your conscience been eaten by a dog? Why do you always have such exquisite beauties around you? Where did you find it?" The topic of the martial addict jumped so fast that even Fang Yan found it hard to resist. The martial addict waved his hand dismissively and said, "Living people want to live. I've been obsessed with martial arts for my entire life, and for me, martial arts are the sexiest women. Since you've enjoyed the pleasures of love, then let me also enjoy this boundless spring." You can't help but admire some people's language skills. No matter how serious the topic was, when it came out of his mouth, it always made people feel like he had a vulgar and obscene temperament. While Fang Yan was still thinking about what to say to pull this bad atmosphere back to the right path, the martial addict was already very impatient. He didn't seem to take any action, but he lifted his right foot and stomped down. A powerful white stream of air rushed out, like a long white dragon drilling a hole in the hard stone ground. Cha-cha, this was the sound of grass and trees being cut. There was no room for resistance. A long crack appeared on the ground. The long stream of air headed straight for where Fang Yan was standing. After stomping his foot, the martial addict lowered his body and dove towards Fang Yan's direction. He clenched his hands into fists and punched towards Fang Yan's face. Whoosh! A white flash of lightning appeared in front of Fang Yan. Because the night was too dark, and because the lightning was too white, everything within a few meters was illuminated as if it was daytime. Whoosh! Where the lightning flashed, sparks of burning air could be seen. Fang Yan's toes touched the ground, continuously using drunken crane riding the wind-swaying steps, his body continuously retreating. The martial addict took the initiative and attacked. His fist missed, and he punched out again. Whoosh! Another white flash of lightning appeared. The white flash of lightning illuminated the martial addict's cold, serious, almost sinister face. When the martial addict was fighting seriously, he wasn't handsome, but he gave off a masculine vibe. Strange, why would I have such a thought? Fang Yan thought in annoyance. He felt that he had been led astray by the martial addict, and could no longer be a decent handsome man. Fong Yan still used drunken crane riding the wind to dodge, and used unintentional to deal with intentional. The key to drunken crane riding the wind was that as long as it felt the airflow, it would dodge in the opposite direction. Every punch and kick that others threw out was like a gust of wind to him. Good wind, help me ascend to the clouds. Fong Yan couldn't ascend to the clouds, so he continued to move quickly at the top of Solitary Sword Peak. The martial addict's attacks had already formed a formation, and his fists formed a formation. Countless white airflow and lightning exploded in front of him, and countless stars appeared in the air and were destroyed. As a result, his life was short. Bolt after bolt of lightning, countless bolts of lightning crisscrossed and collided, once again brewing into a ball of lightning that looked calm on the outside, but was ruthless on the inside. Once it exploded, it could tear a person to pieces. Fong Yan had already suffered once, so he wouldn't touch those bolts of lightning again. Even if he was very confident in his Taiji heart, even if he could clearly see the lines of each of the martial addict's fists in the Taiji domain, even if he could find the safest gap among those countless red lines, and then put his arm in, but he definitely wouldn't do such a stupid thing again. The martial addict's attacks became faster and faster, and the movements of his fists had already become a blur. The shadows of the fists and the shadows of the lightning intertwined, creating a scene that was both beautiful and dangerous. His body was like an enraged bull, rushing forward with all its might, rumbling and shaking the earth with every step. Fong Yan's small steps also became faster and faster, and finally, Fong Yan's figure also disappeared in the shadows of the fists and the lightning. In close contact, in a face-to-face battle, Fong Yan truly felt the terror of the martial addict. His fists could crack the air, and every step of his feet could similarly crack the earth's crust. In other words, Fong Yan not only had to receive his fists, but also had to be on guard against the endless small movements of his feet. Whether he was hit on the upper body or sneak attacked on the lower body, he would immediately use the cracking technique to crack. Based on Fong Yan's understanding of him, he would definitely be able to do such a thing. Retreat was not Fong Yan's style, but escape. He really wanted to turn around and run down the mountain. That is, if he could run away. Why did he want to fight to the death with this guy for no rhyme or reason? He didn't steal Yiro from him, and he didn't kill his own father. Why did he have to fight like this? Oh, by the way, there was hostility in Fong Yan's heart. Fong Yan decided to release the hostility that had accumulated in his body and almost overflowed. When he thought of this, he had already thought of clenching his fists to fight back. Just when he was about to bite the bullet and punch back, the martial addict punched more than a dozen times in a row, and the dozen punches turned into a dozen lightning. People with profound inner strength were willful. Their punches were like they were free. Fong Yan had no choice but to keep retreating. He kept retreating. However, if he kept retreating, he would be forced to the edge of the cliff by the martial addict. He was getting closer and closer to the cliff, and he could already hear his feet kicking out the stones and rolling down the mountain. There was no way to retreat, so he had to retreat again. According to the way the martial addict attacked, he intended to force Fong Yan off the cliff. Like a storm, like a broken bead curtain. Like a lute being played wildly, like a guitar being played wildly. Martial addict was completely immersed in his own rhythm. When a person did things extremely smoothly, he would have a sense of rhythm. It was like this when he sang, when he typed, and when he fought with others. At this time, even if the martial addict didn't want to kill Fong Yan, he couldn't stop what he was doing. Because it was the most wonderful thing in the world. For the martial addict, it was a million times more wonderful than the love between a man and a woman. Cracking skill. Everywhere was cracked. His punches cracked, his kicks cracked, his palms cracked, and he even opened his mouth and roared because he was having too much fun. Their words were like swords and lightning. Ah! The martial addict shouted and screamed. He felt that today's fight was so enjoyable. The feeling of being able to attack and blast as he pleased was simply too comfortable. In the past, when he fought with others, the weak ones fell down in a few punches and kicks. Those who were strong would be knocked down after he bombarded them for a while. Of course, this had never happened before. Only once or twice, or 2 or 3 times, but Fong Yen was different. No matter how much he punched, Fong Yen just calmly retreated. Don't underestimate the word retreat. In the eyes of a true master, retreating was harder than advancing. Because the human body was used to walking forward, it was easy to lose one's footing or get knocked down by an object when retreating. Moreover, under his high rhythm of punching, Fong Yen was still orderly even when retreating, and always tried to counterattack. This was very rare and precious. That's great, the martial addict shouted. He wanted to tear off all his clothes and run naked on the top of the mountain. Bah! Fong Yen spat out a mouthful of phlegm. That's great. The martial addict only felt a mouthful of phlegm slipping into his mouth, but before he could react, it had already flowed down. Chapter 568. There was no need for image, and no need for quality. For a war, the most important and only factor was winning or losing. Yes, Fong Yen had always been a handsome, aloof, and sunny young man. He never ate leftovers, never wore dirty clothes, and never threw garbage anywhere or spat on the street. As for spitting into someone's mouth, Fong Yen had never even thought about it. It made him feel disgusted. But this was a battle. When Ho Zhendong, the martial maniac, connected his cracking magic kung fu into a formation and set a rhythm. His punches were the most domineering and rhythmic. Even with Fong Yan's strength, he would be at a disadvantage if he continued to fight. Moreover, the cracking magic kung fu had another characteristic, which was that old punches could be connected with new punches, and old forces could be connected with new forces. If it was an ordinary person's kung fu, with one punch, the energy would be released. If it didn't hurt anyone or anything, the energy would naturally disappear in the air. But the cracking magic kung fu was different. Their airflow could form lightning, and each single lightning could form a net. They relied on each other and supported each other. It became an independent little world. When an external force or object entered or touched it, it would immediately explode in anger, giving the other party the strongest blow, just like a chaste virgin. Ho Zhendong was able to become one of Hua Xiao's 7 martial maniacs, and not Ho Xiaolong or anyone else, so naturally he had something special. He was able to win more than he lost in hundreds of battles, and he was able to fight against Azure Dragon Mo Qingdi at his peak. In Fong Yan's opinion, besides his shameless stalking that made the old drunkard unable to bear it, the most important reason was that there was something about this person that attracted Mo Qingdi. What could a middle-aged fatso have that attracted Mo Qingdi? If it wasn't his body or face, then it could only be his kung fu. And because he had seen the power of the cracking magic kung fu, Fong Yan kept retreating. Fong Yan knew their advantages, and he also knew that he wasn't suitable to fight them head-on. He didn't steal a girl, and he didn't kill his father. Why would he fight to the death? So, Fong Yan needed a chance. It was a chance for him to make a move, a chance for him to counterattack in a desperate situation. He didn't know much about the martial addict and didn't know that he had a bad habit of shouting and screaming when fighting. Didn't he know that it was easy to absorb the fog from the hilltop or the dust from the kicks? Even if he wasn't afraid of this, didn't anyone spit on his face when he fought before? Pay attention to hygiene and start with some small habits. Fong Yan felt that the martial arts fanatic was a man who did not pay much attention to hygiene. The martial addict didn't pay much attention to it at first. He just felt that he had swallowed something, like a bug or something else. When he connected the word pay that Fong Yan had spat at him, he suddenly felt like he had swallowed a fly. No, he would rather eat 100 flies than eat Fong Yan's saliva. The martial arts fanatic was dumbfounded. His brain short-circuited for a moment. His expression was twisted in pain, and his face was filled with anger. This is too disgusting. How could this guy do such a thing? As he thought of this, a gap immediately appeared in the path of his fist, and an obvious gap appeared in the electric net of lightning. In the blink of an eye, it was seen by Fong Yan. At this time, Fong Yan had already retreated to the edge of the cliff. If he took another step back, his whole body would fall into the endless darkness. Fong Yan finally made his move. His white and slender right hand stretched out, and then stabbed towards the electric net of the cracking magic skill. The skin of his arm was white and tender, and his fingers were slender and flexible. That hand seemed to have eyes, and with a whoosh, it grabbed a handful of lightning. Yes, he grabbed the white lightning formed by the airflow in his hand. The airflow did not dissipate, and the lightning was still flashing with white light. Crackle crackle, it struggled desperately, twisting. The air around it hissed as it burned. Fine sparks flew one after another, and before you could take a closer look, they disappeared without a trace. Fong Yan grabbed the bolt of lightning in his hand and used it as a guide to spin it 3 times in a counterclockwise manner on the lightning planet. When he pulled his hand out of the lightning star, the lightning ball began to hiss, and the elliptical object turned into a pancake. Like a silver bottle spilling out, like a spear bursting out. Countless strands of lightning stretched out and then retracted in an instant. When they retracted, the pancake lightning suddenly expanded a lot. It was like a shot put suddenly turned into a flying saucer. Boom, the silver lightning ball suddenly exploded. The countless bolts of lightning were like countless silver snakes, roaring and flashing in all directions. For a moment, the sky was bright, and the snakes flew randomly in the sky. The lightning star was the lightning star of the martial addict, and the airflow was also the strength of the martial addict's punch. When the lightning star exploded, the martial addict's body still maintained the inertia of moving forward. Even though he had already reacted quickly, even though he had noticed a flaw in his attack and immediately made up for it. Unfortunately, he was still one step too late. Bang! His body collided with the exploding lightning star, and the explosive force of the lightning star sent his body flying. The cracking qigong formed a natural array, and if there was an array, there must be an array eye. If it was in normal times, it would be very difficult for Fong Yan to find where the array eye of the cracking qigong was. Besides, even if he found it, there was nothing he could do. Because the martial addict Ho Zhendong's attack was too fierce. If you knew that there was a spirit herb on the cliff, as long as you climbed up, you could pick it, but on the way up, you might encounter a landslide, be covered in ice and snow, and accidentally fall, and be smashed to pieces. Would you still be willing to pick that spirit herb? His mood was naturally contradictory. However, when the martial addict Ho Zhendong swallowed the saliva that Fong Yan had spat out, and when the martial addict's attack showed a flaw because of disgust, the array eye was firmly captured by Fong Yan's Tai Chi heart. He operated the Tai Chi domain, skillfully found the array eye, and then pulled out the line that ran through the whole supporting array. As a result, the lightning star immediately lost its power and vitality, and the array without a skeleton and soul collapsed in an instant. The airflow lightning in Fong Yan's hand, which was used as the array eye, not only did not disappear, but also became thicker and brighter after he poured his strength into it. It was not bound by anything. It was not willing to be in the hands of Fong Yan, not willing to let its fate be controlled by someone else. Fong Yan helped it. When the silver lightning ball exploded, he suddenly threw out the white lightning. Paw! The white lightning brought with it countless lightning bolts and attacked the chest of the martial addict Hojindong, who was still flying in the air after being bombarded by the lightning star. At this time, the seriously injured martial addict Wujindong had no time to defend, nor could he defend against Fang Yan's full attack. Zilala, the white lightning hit the martial addict's chest and disappeared, but the speed at which Hojindong flew back increased by several times. Clang clang clang, crack, the martial addict's body flew backward for more than 10 meters, knocking down countless rugged rocks and broken wooden stakes. Finally, he crashed into a thick and hard tree before he stopped with difficulty. Silence. A deathly silence. After a long time, the martial addict finally moved. The martial addict shook his head and sat up from the ground with his hands. His face was purplish red, as if he wanted to say something but could not speak. Bang! The martial addict punched himself in the chest. Pft! He spat out a mouthful of thick blood, and the abnormal flush on the martial addict's face gradually disappeared. The martial addict took a deep breath, and then climbed up from the ground with one hand on the tree. He walked toward Fang Yan step by step, and then stopped a few meters away from Fang Yan. Pretty boy, the martial addict cursed. But when he thought about it, this was a man who could knock him down, so it was too disrespectful to call him a pretty boy. So, the martial addict changed his words. Fang Yan, you bastard, how could you do such a disgusting thing? Do you have any personal hygiene? Do you have any martial artist's morals? Do you have any demeanor of a master? How did a shameless person like you learn the heart of Tai Chi? How did you become the most outstanding figure of the Tai Chi branch? So what if you beat me? Humiliation, this is the most humiliating thing in the world, spitting at someone during a fight. This is not only disrespecting your opponent, it is also disrespecting yourself. Whether it's the inner or outer Jianghu, everyone should be ashamed of your behavior. Fang Yan smiled at him and said, when you use all kinds of methods to force others to fight you, have you ever thought about a martial artist's morals? You used a woman's life to threaten me to come here today. Do you have any demeanor of a master? You are one of the 7 addicts of Hua Xia, a famous figure for decades. I only learned a little bit from you. If you don't care about your reputation, why should I? The martial addict was choked by Fang Yan's words. Indeed, in order to force others to fight him, he did a lot of things. Sometimes, he even used the lives of other people's family members to threaten him. Although he didn't do anything to those people's family members, his bad reputation still spread. Senior, thank you for letting me win, Fang Yan cupped his hands and said with a smile. The martial addict's face turned green and white. He hesitated for a while, but finally couldn't help but ask, are you sick? Fang Yan wanted to spit at his face again. You're the one who's sick. Chapter 569. The martial addict's worries were not unfounded. He had just swallowed the phlegm that Fang Yan spat out. If Fang Yan had any infectious diseases like tuberculosis or AIDS, wouldn't he be in trouble as well? Besides, this kid was covered in flowers and leaves. No one would believe him if he said he didn't have AIDS. He felt disgusted to ask such a question, but he was worried if he didn't ask. After hesitating for a long time, he couldn't help but say what he was worried about. Are you sick? Fang Yan wasn't sick. Even if he was, it would only be a psychological problem. Fang Yan looked at the martial addict and clasped his hands together, then said, Senior, you asked me to fight with you at the top of the One-Sword Peak tonight. Now that I'm here and we've fought, is this the end of the matter? This kid has not learned martial arts for a long time and his kung fu isn't high. Elder, you should find someone more powerful to spar with. Only they can be your real opponent and satisfy your desire to fight. The martial addict was furious. He pointed at Fang Yan and scolded, Why are you cursing me in a roundabout way? You said you're not learned martial arts for a long time and your kung fu isn't high. How did you send me flying? How did you break my cracking saber array? If you're not learned martial arts, then we deserve to die. Young man, don't be too arrogant, or you'll kick a steel plank. Fong Yan thought about it seriously and said humbly, "Thank you for your reminder, I'll keep your words in mind. If I have the chance to kick a steel plank next time, I'll try my best to kick a hole through it." Fong Yan waved his hand and was about to walk down the mountain. He said, "Elder, it's getting late. My lungs haven't been well lately, so my family made me white fungus and pear porridge. I'm in a hurry to eat a bowl of porridge. Want to run?" The martial addict sneered. "It's just the beginning, and you want to go down the mountain already? Isn't it over?" Fong Yan asked in confusion. He had been knocked down by the martial arts fanatic once, and then he had broken his lightning star and knocked him down even more fiercely. Although on the surface, it looked like both sides were injured and both sides had won and lost, there were still some subtle differences. When he fell to the ground, he quickly got up, and it was his head that was bleeding, not his mouth. After the martial addict fell to the ground, he didn't move for a long time. It looked as if he had been killed by Zhongheng. In the end, he even patted his chest and spat out a mouthful of blood. "No matter how I looked at it, it seemed that I won, right? That was just a warm-up. If a man did not fight to his heart's content and fight to the death, what kind of decisive battle was that? Do you think this is child's play?" Before he finished speaking, he had already started moving. The martial addict's words were loud and vigorous, but when he rushed over, he was silent. This time, the martial addict didn't use the cracking technique. When his feet landed on the ground, there were no more air currents or cracks on the ground. His footsteps were silent, and he left no trace on the snow. His toes touched the ground, and as soon as his toes touched the ground, his whole body jumped high. He was like a balloon filled with air, light and flexible, as if he was walking on the tips of grass and branches. He was a completely different person from the martial arts fanatic who had just punched with thunderclaps and attacked with lightning bolts from his feet. Anyone who saw him would admire this middle-aged man's godlike speed and various difficult movements like a ghost. Soft technique. This time, Fong Yan really respected and admired the martial addict Ho Jindong. Just as ice and fire could not mix, soft and hard were also natural enemies. The cracking technique belonged to the strongest and most hard kung fu. When it was used, it was like thunder and lightning. He charged towards Fong Yan with the momentum of breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, as if he wanted to crush and destroy all the obstacles in front of him. But the soft technique was the opposite. It looked light and gentle, but it was impossible to guard against and unavoidable. It could easily kill people. The soft technique was not Tai Chi, but it was similar to Tai Chi's Forliang moving 1,000 jin. For a weapon like a sword, a hard one was not as good as a soft one. 10 years for a hard sword, 30 years for a soft sword. Some people were good at using hard weapons and could use hard weapons to the extreme. For example, Azure Dragon's long spear. Some people were good at using soft weapons and could make soft swords and whips a part of their body. For example, Black Dragon's 100 Ghost Beard and Yuan's long whip. But very few people could practice these two weapons or their strength to the extreme at the same time. First, it was too time-consuming, and second, it was necessary to specialize in one to become a god in that field. If he was half-hearted, then he might face a result that would not be pleasing to either side. Others were not willing to do it, but the martial addict did it. Because of his obsession with martial arts, the martial addict was not willing to give up on any opponent, and he was not willing to give up on any kind of attempt. That was why he could be listed as one of Hua Xiao's 7 addicts. He was serious because of respect, and cautious because of admiration. Seeing the martial addict's body rushing towards him as if it was floating, Fang Yan's long robe swayed slightly, and he displayed the Fang family's triangular plum blossom steps, taking the initiative to meet the martial addict. As the distance closed, the little dragon catcher hand went to buckle the martial addict's wrist. The martial addict flipped, and Fang Yan buckled again. The martial addict flipped again, and when Fang Yan dodged, he buckled again. There was no sound of airflow, and there was no sword light or shadow. One wanted to buckle the opponent's wrist, and the other wanted to counterattack when he flipped and dodged. If he failed, he buckled again. If he failed again, he buckled again. His wrists flipped, and his fingers moved like lightning. In just a short period of time, they had already exchanged blows 368 times. Every move contained both offensive and defensive movements, and these two movements contained endless variations. This was the simplest duel, because it was just the two of them standing there and flipping their hands and feet. This was also the most dangerous duel, because if one was a step slower or accidentally got his hands and feet locked by the other, he would lose all his advantages, and face a storm of attacks. The possibility of a one-hit kill was also very high. The martial addict's advantage was that his moves were elegant, and his attacks could be said to be unpredictable. Fang Yan's advantage was the help of the Taiji heart. In the Taiji domain, the trajectory of the martial addict's every move was clearly visible. After more than 300 flips and attacks, the martial addict finally became a little impatient. He roared, and his body suddenly floated high up in the air like a balloon. His body spun wildly in the air, and the airflow caused by the rotation turned into a black whirlpool of wind. A strong gust of wind blew and enveloped Fang Yan, who was on the ground. Whoosh! Fang Yan was covered by the tornado, and in an instant, he was in the eye of the storm. His mouth couldn't speak, and his eyes couldn't see. All he could hear was the whooshing sound of the wind, and the indistinguishable wails of ghosts and wolves. Since you don't let me see, and don't let me hear, then I might as well not see and not listen. Fang Yan stood still, and closed his eyes. Whoosh! A fist suddenly came, aiming straight for Fang Yan's ear. The ear was one of the most vulnerable parts of the human body, and the ear was very close to the temple. With a single punch, his entire head would explode. The fist was hidden in the darkness, and came together with the sound of the wind. It was very difficult for people to notice its existence. However, how could this deceive Fang Yan, who had the Taiji heart? Fang Yan tilted his head, and just happened to avoid the punch. Another kick came toward Fang Yan's groin with the sound of the wind. Fang Yan was furious, and his body moved 3 steps to the side, and just happened to avoid this ruthless attack. Then, an overwhelming barrage of attacks came from all directions. Fang Yan could clearly feel that the martial addict wasn't fighting alone, but there were countless people fighting with him. He wasn't facing a single person, but a group of unfathomable evil spirits. Whoosh! As Fang Yan punched out, other than the sound of the wind, there was no other sound. Pretty boy, don't make any useless struggles. This is the cotton art. My heart is cotton, my body is cotton, everything I have is cotton. The cotton is always floating in the wind. The martial addict attacked Fang Yan from all directions, while loudly showing off his unique skill. Save it, I advise you to save your strength. How can you hit the cotton? Before your fist could even reach me, the air current would have already washed the cotton away. Don't you think this move is very familiar? Yes, this is what I learned from Don't Underestimate the Enemy's Drunken Crane Riding the Wind. What kind of enlightenment is that? Fang Yan sneered in his mind. Isn't this obviously plagiarism? Don't you have any shame? Whether it's enlightenment or plagiarism, in any case, this is my cotton art. Drunken Crane Riding the Wind is only a set of footwork, but I've turned it into a set of martial arts. Isn't this my own creation? Don't Underestimate the Enemy is a genius, but he doesn't think about martial arts, and is greedy for the love and affection of the world. If he wholeheartedly pursued Tao, how could he have lost to the dragon god? What a pity! How hateful! Fang Yan didn't say anything, only closed his eyes and focused on feeling it. He felt the all-pervasive punches and kicks, and felt the cracking kung fu that appeared in the tornado from time to time. Yes, the martial addict is a genius in martial arts. Sometimes he's frivolous, sometimes he's tough. He's a cotton, but this cotton is able to use the strongest and toughest cracking art. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the wind howled. Ao ao ao, ghostly cries and wolf howls. Crack crack crack, this is the cracking art's lightning-like shadow. The martial addict alone can bring about such a huge battle, using 3 different styles of martial arts to duel. Fang Yan felt very wronged. He felt like he was being completely suppressed. Pretty boy, make your move. Make your move. Make your move. Use your most powerful skill. Use the heart of Tai Chi. Let me see how strong you are. Let me see if you are the top expert of Tai Chi. Fang Yan, be angry, fight with all you have, otherwise you won't have another chance. Clang, Fang Yan's body shot up like an arrow, then threw a punch. It was like a humanoid anti-aircraft gun. The wind stopped, the clouds stopped. The lightning disappeared, the howling of the wolves also disappeared. The martial addict's body flew high into the sky, reaching a height that was hard to see with the naked eye. He's flying so high. Fang Yan looked up, muttering to himself. Chapter 570. Bam! Like a bull falling from the sky, Ho Zhendong's body slammed into the mountain peak. Crack! There was a protruding rock under his body that was crushed by his huge body. Fang Yan could feel the earth trembling, as if the entire sword peak was about to be turned into a sword field. The martial addict laid there motionlessly, his body was surrounded by flying dust. Senior, Fang Yan called out. No one answered. Senior, are you all right? Still no one answered. Don't tell me he's dead. Fang Yan frowned. And he didn't sign a "I won't take any responsibility if you die" agreement before the fight. If the martial addict really died, wouldn't I have to take responsibility if the police came looking for me? Uncle Police, that man forced me to fight, he used my family to threaten me, and said that if I don't come, he'll harm my girlfriend. I already told him to stop fighting, but he wouldn't let me go, saying that it was only a warm-up. Why is my life so bitter? Fang Yan's eyes became hot, almost tearing up. I'm not dead. The hoarse voice came from where the martial addict was lying. The martial addict slowly sat up with his hands on the ground, but he didn't have the strength to get up. His expression was a mess, his face was split open one after another. Blood stained his cheeks, and even his eyes were bloodshot. It wasn't until now that Fang Yan noticed that he was sitting there naked. His clothes had already been burned away during the high-speed rotation, turning into invisible dust. A naked middle-aged man sitting on top of an empty valley. This scene really made people want to turn around and run. The martial addict looked at Fang Yan with a bitter expression and asked, "How did you find me?" "I wanted to find you, so I found you," Fang Yan replied. "Impossible, I hid in the middle of the tornado, my heart was like cotton, my body was also cotton." Fang Yan laughed and said, "You say you are cotton, do you really think you are cotton?" "I have to admit, your cotton martial art is indeed very powerful. You have reached the pinnacle of using your body and strength. If it was someone who was not up to standard, they would definitely be blasted into smithereens by this move of yours." "Cut the crap." The martial addict said, "You suddenly punched out, my body hadn't moved to the space above you yet, I only had that thought." "How did you know I would get there?" "I have the heart of Tai Chi," Fang Yan said. The heart of Tai Chi contains the realm of Tai Chi. I've recorded all of your movements and analyzed them. Finally, I found your figure and sent you flying with a punch. That's it? The martial addict asked dejectedly. Who was he? He was the martial arts addict, one of the 7 addicts of Huaxia. He was the best at martial arts among the 7. Of course, the music addict was also the best at music among the 7. The medicine addict was also the best at medical skills among the 7. He knew that Fang Yan was quite strong, otherwise he wouldn't have asked him to spar with him. He also knew that he was quite strong, otherwise, how could he become one of the 7 addicts of Huaxia? There would always be a winner and a loser in a battle, but who would be willing to lose rather than win? There's also the most important point, Fang Yan said. What is it? You talk too much. Fang Yan answered truthfully. When you were fighting me, you kept showing off the origin of your martial arts. I was able to accurately lock onto you based on the position of your voice. Fang Yan looked at the martial addict whose head was covered in blood and said, Senior, thank you for letting me win. Can I go down the mountain now? There really is porridge at home. I need to go back and eat a bowl while it's still hot. The martial addict waved his hand and said, Go, go. I hope you still have the strength to go back and eat a bowl of porridge. Fang Yan smiled and said, I don't have the strength to fight, but I still have the strength to eat porridge. The martial addict coldly smiled as his body weakly laid down on the ground. Seeing the martial addict's weak expression, Fang Yan thought that he was unwilling to lose to him, so he tried to console him. Senior, winning and losing are common in battles. Although I've never lost before, I don't think you should place too much emphasis on winning and losing. If you fall from my hands, you'll have to find your way back from someone else. You're the martial addict. Who are you afraid of? Scram, the martial addict angrily roared. Scram as far as you can. Fang Yan laughed and said, Senior, the wind on the mountain is cold and there are many insects. Be careful. Although the martial addict was heavily injured, the wind and insects on the mountain couldn't do anything to him, so Fang Yan calmly walked down the mountain. The martial addict opened his eyes and looked up at the starry sky with a bitter expression and softly said, Brat, I'm sorry, love will be like a hungry wolf. How can I hug him to sleep? He'll definitely leave me with severe wounds as a souvenir. Love will be like a hungry wolf, his mouth is sweet, if I come closer to play, his ferocious face will appear. Fang Yan was very happy. Fang Yan liked to drink and sing whenever he was happy. His Cantonese wasn't very good, he only started to learn it after he arrived at Huaqing. That's why Heavenly King Zhang's classic Cantonese song, Legend of the Hungry Wolf, was sung by him in Huaxia language. You don't say, it really does have a different kind of unpleasant taste. While singing Legend of the Hungry Wolf, Fang Yan happily walked down the steep mountain path. If someone looked at him from afar, they would definitely think that he was a pervert in heat. As he walked, Fang Yan suddenly remembered something very important. Where's Snake Lord? Fang Yan thought to himself. Although he didn't let the Snake Lord follow him, his intention was to let the Snake Lord protect him in secret. Now that he was safe and sound and had defeated one of the 7 addicts of Huaxia, Hozhendong, shouldn't the Snake Lord quickly stand up and flatter him by saying something like, I knew you would win. This child really doesn't know anything. Fang Yan turned around and it was pitch black behind him. If Fang Yan was an ordinary person, he would have already shouted Snake Lord's name at the top of his lungs. But Fang Yan wasn't an ordinary person, he was a man who defeated the martial addict. Therefore, Fang Yan decided to call the martial addict. Thanks to technology. Fang Yan wanted to take out his phone from his pocket, but he found that his phone had already disappeared. After thinking for a long time, he remembered that he didn't bring his phone with him when he went out. It wasn't the first time he had a duel, and every time after a duel, he would lose a phone. Later, after he gained experience, he didn't take his phone with him when he went out to fight. if the police picked up his phone, wouldn't it prove that he was at the scene of the crime? Besides, he had to spend money to buy a phone. Fong Yen couldn't contact the Snake Lord, so he planned to wait for him at the parking lot at the foot of the mountain. Although he was the master of the Snake Lord was just his snake slave. However, Fong Yen was not a heartless employer. He still cared about the life and death of his follower. Although his follower's mind had never been on his side, he had to work for him because he was forced. Sometimes Fong Yen was really curious about what kind of woman the sister of the Snake Lord was and why she could make the Snake Lord make such a big sacrifice. If she was good-looking, he would go and court her. If she was not good-looking, he would let Fong Yingying court her. In that case, he or Fong Yingying would become the brother-in-law of the Snake Lord. Of course, Fong Yen couldn't do such a thing. He already had a girlfriend, and he couldn't let Yi Ro down. He didn't dare. She turned off the evening light, covered her shoulders, intertwined sparks, imprisoned in precipitation. Fong Yen sang his Hua Xia version of the passionate song again. Clang! The sound of stones rolling came from behind him. Fong Yen turned around as fast as lightning and shouted, "Who is it? Come out." No one answered, and naturally, no one came out. Fong Yen stood there for a few seconds and said with a sneer, "Come out. Don't hide your head like a turtle, I've already seen you." Crash! The leaves swayed, and a pitch-black figure leaped up from a tree that was as thick as a person. Whoosh! The black shadow landed on the ground without a sound. It seemed that his qigong was very good. Fong Yen didn't expect that someone would really jump from the tree. He was shocked and shouted, "Come out together, don't hide." Clang! A short old man appeared on top of a large rock. His gaze was as sharp as lightning as it swept across Fong Yen. "Ha ha ha, you're a smart one. Even my silkworm detection art couldn't fool you." Another old man jumped up from the tall grass on the side of the road and revealed his small head. Fong Yen opened his mouth wide as he looked at what was happening in front of him. Isn't this a bit too fucking cooperative? I just randomly shouted, how did you really come out? If I tell you to come out, then you come out. If I tell you to scram, then will you scram? So, Fong Yen sneered and shouted, since you don't want to come out, then don't blame me for not serving you. After saying that, Fong Yen turned around and ran down the one-sword peak. Didn't we come out? The small old man sitting in the grass asked with a confused expression. I've already spoken, how else can I prove that I've come out? The big old man sitting on top of the large rock sneered and said, that brat is playing tricks, he's afraid that we'll wrap him up like a dumpling. Humph. The small old man in the grass snorted and said, I'm afraid he won't be able to leave One-Sword Peak tonight. That's not necessarily true, the man in black with a black veil said with disdain. The two old men, one with a big head and one with a small head, were furious. The small head old man said angrily, whose side are you on? The big old man coldly looked at the man in black and said, no matter what, this brat is going to die today. Why aren't you going to chase him? Before he finished speaking, he tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and leaped high up from the boulder. Like a rock spreading its wings, he chased after Fong Yen fiercely. The little old man's sharp eyes swept over the black-robed man, and he also chased after him. The man in black stood still and looked at the distant star in the sky and sighed. Chapter 571. When Fong Yen punched Ho Zhendong into the sky, he felt that he had turned martial fanatic into Grey Wolf. Now Fong Yen ran as fast as he could, feeling like Happy Goat who was about to be eaten by Grey Wolf. No matter how smart Happy Goat was, he still fell into Grey Wolf's trap. This was an ambush. They had already planned for this moment to come. From the encounter with martial fanatic on the Pearl River, to the fairy offering flowers, to the demonstration of the cracking turtle technique in school, to the provocation and threats at noon, and the crazy battle on the one-sword peak just now. Otherwise, how would they know that he was going to compete with martial fanatic Ho Jindong tonight? How could they just happen to hide on the way back after his great victory? There were not so many coincidences in this world, and all coincidences could be manipulated by a mastermind behind the scenes. Fong Yan could even guess who the mastermind was, but it was too late to say anything now. Without a doubt, martial fanatic was also one of them. Martial fanatic was one of Hua Xiao's 7 fanatics, how could he also be one of them? Fong Yan did not understand, he did not understand at all. How could martial fanatic be bribed? What else could he be bribed with? For someone who loved martial arts so much, what else could he be greedy for? And, there was a more serious fact that Fong Yan did not dare to think about, because it was too hurtful and too cruel: escape. Use all the strength in his body to escape. Why should he escape? Why not fight with them? Fong Yan was not an idiot. Knowing that the enemy was strong and he was weak, why would he take the initiative to run to his death? Our ancestors told us many years ago that the first rule of fighting is, fight if you can win, run if you can't. Fong Yan had just fought with martial fanatic, and he had used up too much of his strength and stamina. Now was his weakest time, but he did not know how many people the other side had. How many people had come? One jumped down from the big tree, another jumped up from the bushes, and another pretentious fellow stood on top of a big rock. What was this? Run! Like a stray dog, in a sorry state. Fong Yan did not use the Fong family's plum blossom steps, nor did he use the old drunkard's drunken crane rides the wind. What he needed was to run in a straight line, from the top of the mountain to the bottom, dodging trees and jumping rocks. Fong Yan's body jumped up and down, moving up and down. His body was as agile as a monkey, and his movements were as nimble as a rabbit. He was the spirit of the forest, a flea in the darkness. *paw, *kacha, the sound of stones being crushed and branches being broken could be heard incessantly, attracting the pursuit of the people behind them. Panicking without choosing a path, was Fong Yan's current state. There was a large rock in front of him. Fong Yan lightly tapped the tip of his foot and leaped high into the air. Swoosh! A streak of silver light flickered as it chopped towards Fong Yan's head in an incomparably biting cold manner. There was an ambush behind the rock, and it was an expert lying in ambush. He didn't show his head, and he didn't even see Fong Yan's body. Just from the way he leaped, he knew what he was going to do: a graceful slash, incomparably domineering. Fong Yan's body was still in midair, his body maintaining a diving posture. The sudden appearance of the slash had indeed caught people off guard. Fong Yan's body suddenly stopped in midair, as if he had suddenly lost gravity and Earth's gravitational pull. Yes, the current Fong Yan had indeed lost gravity and Earth's gravitational pull. He used the Tai Chi force to repel the air around him, putting himself in a state of vacuum. This way, he could instantly stop in midair, as if he had cast a body-freezing spell on himself. However, Fong Yan could only cast a body-freezing spell on himself, but he couldn't cast it on others. When his body froze in midair, the long saber still slashed towards his body as if it had eyes of its own. Horizontal slash. This kind of saber technique originated from the Japanese kendo, and every slash had only one variation. Horizontal slashes and vertical slashes all had the word one, so it was also called horizontal slash. It was also known as true energy slash. This was because every time the saber slashed out, before the saber could hurt anyone, the true energy carried by the long saber would already be able to hurt someone. Fong Yan felt the strong energy, which was like an invisible knife attacking him. It collided fiercely with the protective barrier formed by Fong Yan's Tai Chi force, producing a hissing sound. The true energy of the horizontal slash was ultimately unable to break through the barrier, so it could only roar outside the barrier to vent its grievance and unwillingness. At the same time, the long saber itself also slashed horizontally. Fong Yan wasn't confident that his protective barrier could block the long saber. After his body stopped, he immediately used the willow catkin follows the wind. When the saber slashed towards him, the saber's energy and killing intent actually blew him away. Because the released energy was too strong, a transparent ball appeared around his body. Under the protection of the round ball, his body flew backward. The saber missed, and a gray figure leaped from behind the rock into the air at lightning speed. Retracting the saber. Another slash. It was still the horizontal slash. The difference was that previously it was a horizontal slash, but this time it was a vertical slash. His body was also flying in the air as he chased after Fong Yan, who was flying backward. Fong Yan retreated very quickly. The black shadow chased even faster. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the process of chasing, the black figure consecutively slashed out 3 times, 1 horizontal slash, 1 vertical slash, and 1 demonic slash. The 3 slashes formed a rice shape, which happened to lock Fong Yan's body in the middle. Merciless rice slash. Pa! The energy barrier on Fong Yan's body shattered, and his body also fell backwards to the ground. Fong Yan's body landed on the ground, and the black figure's body also landed at the same time. From the time when Fong Yan encountered the rock to the sudden attack of the horizontal slash, it was only a blink of an eye. However, in such a short period of time, the black figure slashed out 5 times, and Fong Yan also dodged 5 times. The black figure held the long saber, and the tip of the long saber was pointed at the ground. The unfamiliar face was someone that Fong Yan had never seen before. But with the 5 slashes he had just made, he was certainly not an unknown person. Fong Yan smiled bitterly. His old friend was really willing to spend a lot of money this time. Couldn't wait any longer. Must he make me stay on this one sword peak tonight? While Fong Yan and the mysterious sabersman were confronting each other, there was the sound of hurried footsteps coming from behind. Obviously, the ambushers had also caught up. Sneaky brat. The small-headed old man ran in front of Fong Yan, and angrily stared at him, and said, "You ran without saying a word. Brat, why don't you run? Continue running." Fong Yan looked at him with a smile, and said, "Who said I didn't say a word? I shouted at the time that if you didn't show up, I wouldn't accompany you. Who said I didn't show up? I'm standing in front of you, and I've talked to you, and you still dare to say I didn't show up?" Fong Yan smiled, and said, "But I didn't see you. Maybe you're too short." "Bastard brat, who are you calling short? Say it clearly." The small-headed old man was irascible, and when he heard Fong Yan say he was short, he was full of dissatisfaction, and wanted to argue with him. The big-headed old man frowned slightly, and said, "Why are you talking to him? Let's fight quickly and waste time." They wanted to fight quickly, but Fong Yan didn't want to fight quickly at all, because if he fought quickly, he would soon be finished by these people. He had just fought with the martial addict, and he needed more time to rest. Every minute of rest would increase his chances of winning or escaping in the battle. "Wait!" Fong Yan shouted. "I have no enmity with you, why do you treat me like this?" The big-headed old man sneered, and said, "This question is unnecessary. If someone wants you to die, you have to die. Aren't these words too overbearing?" Fong Yan retorted bluntly. "If I tell you to eat sh*t, do you have to eat sh*t too? Presumptuous." The big-headed old man shouted angrily. "Brat, you're courting death, don't blame me for being merciless, Kongzhu." Fong Yan thought for a moment and said, "King of Hell holds Kongzhu. Kongzhu was stunned, and said coldly, "So what if you know Grandpa's name? Anyway, don't even think about leaving this sword peak today. You're Kongzhu." Fang Yan pointed to the grumpy small-headed old man, and said, "You're Kongzhu's twin brother, Arhat Fist Xiaomu, right?" "That's me, Grandpa." Xiaomu nodded proudly. "Sure enough, rotten wood can't be carved," Fang Yan said with a smile. "Your brother has much more temperament than you, and he's also much better looking than you." Xiaomu flew into a rage, pointed at Kongzhu, and shouted, "Who said he has more temperament than me? Who said he's better looking than me? How can you tell? I'm obviously more handsome, okay? Everyone says I'm more handsome, you're lying through your teeth." "He's stalling for time," the nameless swordsman said. "Luo Jin, shut up. I want to make things clear with this bastard. What right does he have to say that Kongzhu is better looking than me? Kongzhu's head is so big, his body is so skinny, and he looks like a big-headed doll standing there. How can he have more temperament than me? Luo Jin." Fang Yan looked at the swordsman, his eyes slightly trembling. Blade Lord Luo Jin. Blade Lord Luo Jin was a powerful figure who had been famous for decades, and was an expert of the same generation as old drunkard Mo Qingdi. Back then, these people were all powerful and invincible. They were all the brightest and most dazzling stars in the inner martial world. Old drunkard Mo Qingdi once said that Luo Jin dominated the world with one move. He only knew one move, and only knew one blade. His blade only had 3 transformations: horizontal slash, vertical slash, and evil slash. But it was only these 3 transformations that had cut down countless experts. Luo Jin did not answer Fang Yan's question, and only looked at him coldly, as if he was looking at a corpse. Luo Jin did not talk to dead people, because he felt that it was a very inauspicious thing to do. Fang Yan laughed, and said, "What an honor, I didn't think that I would meet so many famous experts in one night. Snake Lord, where the hell did you go?" Chapter 572. The mountain breeze was blowing, and the night was dark. On a moonless night, the star in the distant sky was the only light overhead. The martial addict was still lying on the ground, with no intention of getting up. He felt very bored, and he was not interested in doing anything. He even felt that getting up was very boring. Where to go after getting up? To do what? Therefore, even though Fang Yan had left for a long time, he was still lying in the same place. There were no mosquito bites, and no venomous snake attacks. He had become one with the surrounding environment. He had become a stone or a tree. He had become a part of this world. The surrounding insects suddenly disappeared, and the grass that was blown by the breeze no longer swayed. Time stood still, and the whole world suddenly froze. It was a feeling that made one's whole body tense, as if the hair on one's body was even more ironed on one's skin. It was sticky and uncomfortable. The martial addict's eyes were slightly cold, but instantly became gentle again. He said, "Sit anywhere, I won't get up to entertain you." A man in a black robe stood on a large rock not far away. After hearing the martial addict's words, he moved to the place where the martial addict was lying and sat down cross-legged. He looked at the bored martial addict and asked in a low voice, "What? Do you want to cherish talent?" "I promised you, and I've done it," the martial addict said impatiently. He didn't like the feeling of being seen through, even though it was always easy for others to see through him. "You just did it," the man in the gray robe said. "I didn't do it. A young man who can solve my fairy's flower, a young man who can break my crack sword array, it would be a lie to say that he doesn't care. This is a good seedling." The martial addict sighed softly. "Why bother? I saw it all." The man in the gray robe said, Otherwise, with your real strength, how could he escape so easily? You are a man who would not easily retreat even when facing Azure Dragon, and it is not easy for him to defeat you. How could he be beaten by this kid for a long time? Martial addict, you have no acting skills, you don't know how to act. I have no acting skills, so I don't want to act, the martial addict said. I told you, I won't kill him with my own hands. I'll just waste a portion of his strength. If you don't kill him, he will still die because of you. What difference does it make? The gray-robed man said. You know he won't be able to leave Solitary Sword Mountain tonight. We can't let him leave Solitary Sword Mountain either. Not necessarily, the martial addict said. Not necessarily. The gray-robed man looked at the martial addict in surprise and said, You have so much confidence in him. He's a different kind of person. He's also a person who can always bring people surprises. I know some physiognomy. He's not a short-lived person. Even if you didn't consume too much of his physical strength, do you know who he's going to face today? I don't know. Yama Palm Diablo, Arhat Fist Withered Wood, those two lackeys with no integrity. We were born to be brothers. The gray-robed man was not angry, and said with a smile, There is also an old friend of yours. Saber Monarch Luo Jin. Luo Jin. The martial addict's expression froze. He smiled bitterly and said, I didn't think you would even invite him. Luo Jin disappeared for 20 years, right? No, 24 years. Do you know where he went? I do. Where did he go? Nameless Mountain. Nameless Temple in Nameless Mountain. Yes. He's in Nameless Temple in Nameless Mountain. Why is he there? Because he doesn't want to leave. The martial addict suddenly sat up straight and said, You gave him the saber manual. Yes. I gave him the saber manual. No wonder. The martial addict's eyes lit up and he said, The saber manual of the Saber Kingly Big Mouth can indeed make someone stay in a place and conceal their identity for 24 years. It's definitely worth entrusting one's life to. Beauty is given to beauties, sword is given to heroes. The saber manual should have been given to Luo Jin. Only he has the right to take it. The gray-robed man said. He's the best saber user in the inner Jianghu. The martial addict finally crawled up from the ground. He looked at the gray-robed man sitting cross-legged in front of him and said, What do you want? Why did you gather so many experts to risk their lives for you? For a wish. What wish? You'll know in the future. The gray-robed man said. 20 years ago, you lost to the Azure Dragon and fell into the martial barrier. You traveled hundreds of miles to Nameless Mountain and asked me to guide you. I taught you a move. Yes. The martial addict nodded. You taught me the Fairy Flower Offering. From the Fairy Flower Offering, I comprehended 3,200 variations of martial arts and successfully broke through the barrier. So you agreed to do 3 things for me. I've already done the first one for you today. There are 2 more. The gray-robed man said, I don't want to be like this again. Continue to lie down. The gray-robed man said. It's cool and refreshing here. I can enjoy the good times at the foot of the mountain. The show down there should be starting soon, right? Why didn't you do it yourself? The martial addict suddenly asked. Why didn't you kill him yourself? Because I promised someone to spare his life. Then why did you ask someone else to kill him? I didn't promise to spare his life. The gray-robed man said something that was difficult to pronounce. The martial addict's IQ was low. It took him several times to understand the meaning of this sentence. After the gray-robed man finished speaking, he stretched out his body and disappeared. The show should be starting soon. The martial addict muttered to himself. What a pity, don't underestimate your enemy. Fong Yen was very angry at the Snake Lord. As a snake slave whose snake eye was controlled, you had to protect your master at all times. If your master wasn't safe, you wouldn't be able to keep your little life either. Fong Yen originally thought that the Snake Lord was silently protecting him in a dark corner. Wasn't it the nature of a snake to take advantage of an unprepared person to bite him? But now he was facing the Yama Palm Diablo and the Arhat Fist Xiaomu, and there was also the Sword Lord Luo Jin who was waiting for him and could strike at any time. At this time, Fong Yen needed help. He needed someone who could fight side by side with him, someone who he could trust his back with. In front of Fong Yen stood the Sword Lord Luo Jin and the Arhat Fist Xiaomu, and behind him stood the Yama Palm Diablo and the masked man in black. If the Snake Lord didn't appear, Fong Yen would be in a miserable situation of being attacked from both the front and the back. If Fong Yen was killed, no matter how powerful the Snake Lord's venomous snake was, what would be the point? Of course, Fong Yen had his own guesses. Could it be that the Snake Lord had already betrayed them and came to deal with him, waiting for his death to take back his snake eye? Fong Yen sneered in his heart. You want to take back what you gave away? I'll eat it in one bite and not give it back to you. It was just that it was a little disgusting to eat it, but he was going to die anyway, so he couldn't be too particular about it. Wouldn't it take too much time to let someone wash it and cook it before eating it? No one answered. The Snake Lord seemed to be dead. Dead? Fong Yen was shocked. This possibility did exist. It wasn't impossible for the ambushers to quietly kill the Snake Lord while he was fighting with the martial arts fanatic. However, the Snake Lord wasn't weak, and he was in the forest. Every insect and beast here could be his subordinates. If they wanted to kill the Snake Lord, they would need to expend a lot of effort, right? And in the process, the Snake Lord couldn't even send a message. What happened in the middle that he didn't know? The Snake Lord. Fong Yen shouted again. Your sister is out. Fong Yen felt that it was better to lie to him. Maybe he wouldn't be able to hide anymore once he heard that his sister was out. No need to shout. Xiao Mu sneered. He's already dead. Dead? Fong Yan's guess was confirmed, but he still felt a little uncomfortable. You said too much. Diablo was very dissatisfied with his idiot brother. After scolding his brother, he looked at the Sword Lord and said, Are you going to attack first, or should we? I just attacked 5 times, Sword Lord Luo Jin said. I'll attack 5 more times. If I can't kill him in 5 times, then it's your turn. Okay, Diablo said. Why should he go first? Xiao Mu said unhappily. I also want to kill this kid. He said I'm not as good looking as you. You really aren't as good looking as your brother, Fong Yen said. He wanted to stall for a while longer. You bastard, shut up, Diablo shouted. If it weren't for the fact that this guy was his brother, he would have killed him. Diablo and Xiao Mu retreated, leaving the wide battlefield to Fong Yen and Luo Jin. They guarded the 2 sides, one on the left and one on the right, in case Fong Yen suddenly ran away while he was fighting. Fong Yen knew why they were doing this. He wanted to angrily ask them one question: where is the most basic trust between people? Sword Lord Luo Jin held his long blade, his dead fish eyes staring unblinkingly at Fong Yen. Fong Yen was also looking at Luo Jin, looking at Luo Jin's eyes. It was very strange, his eyes were very cold, but there was no killing intent in them. Could it be that he didn't want to kill him? Fong Yen knew that the possibility of this was very low. It wasn't that he didn't want to kill him, he just treated him like a pig or a chicken. Which butcher would have killing intent in their eyes when they were killing a pig or a chicken? They only treated it as a kind of profession, a habit, a way to make a living. To them, stabbing a knife into the neck of a pig or cutting off the neck of a chicken was a very insignificant matter. Why would they need killing intent, killing intent, killing intent? Fang Yan felt threatened. He felt the huge deterrence brought about by the saber in the man's hand. Luo Jin held his long blade, walking step by step towards Fang Yan. That's right, he was walking. He did not run, nor did he bend over to dive. He was like an idiot, walking step by step towards Fang Yan. He stopped in front of Fang Yan, then slashed his blade towards Fang Yan's head. Chapter 573. It was just a normal slash. There was no lightning, no howling wind, no tearing of space, no burning of the air. There wasn't even any chi. The Blade Monarch's slash had no chi flow. Wasn't this the biggest joke in the world? How could one injure someone without chi flow? How could one defeat the enemy without chi flow? It was like a woodcutter chopping firewood or a boorish man hoeing the ground. Their object was to cut the log in two, and to soften the hard ground. That was all. Therefore, there was no need for strength. A simple slash. Slash, straight slash. No fancy movements, no complicated foreshadowing. If I want to slash you, I'll slash you. It was that direct, that willful. This slash is called chopping firewood, the Blade Monarch said in a low voice. His voice was as slow and deep as the speed at which he swung his saber. It was as heavy as a 1,000-pound boulder pressing on one's chest, making it difficult to breathe. He took a step forward and slashed. This was the Blade Monarch's entire attack method. Even the name of his slash technique was simple and ordinary. It wasn't as impressive as the 18 dragons subduing palms or the 9 manuals Heaven and Earth Great Shift, which sounded like an awesome move. Just say the name and all the bandits, bullies, and thieves within a 10-mile radius would immediately leave without a trace. It wasn't as elegant as the melancholic sorrow palm or the lover's wool sword, which made one's imagination run wild. Chopping firewood. Who came up with this name? If you're so perfunctory, I promise I won't beat you to death. Fang Yan didn't know the origin of the blade manual, so he didn't know why the name, chopping firewood, was used to name a slash technique. He just felt that the person who came up with this name was uncultured. Fang Yan's guess was right, the person who created this slash technique and named it was uncultured. Chopping firewood, Xiaomu laughed and said, "Fortunately, my Arhat fist is related to Arhat, so it sounds domineering and unconventional. Why isn't it called chopping vegetables?" "There is indeed a chopping vegetable technique," Kongzhu said in a low voice. "Really?" Xiaomu was shocked. What kind of martial arts did this saber monarch learn? "I heard that he used the Luo family's falling rain knife, which was passed down in his family. When he waved the knife, it was like falling rain splashing, airtight." "How did he become a chef now?" "Saber Monarch hasn't appeared for more than 20 years. Where do you think he went? Where did he go?" "He obtained the Saber Manual of the Saber King, Li Big Mouth. For the past 20 years, he has been practicing the saber in seclusion." Saber King Li Big Mouth? Xiaomu was shocked. "The chef from prison?" "Yes, it's exactly the Knife King Li Big Mouth who came out of prison." Kongzhu nodded his head with a dignified expression. "Li Big Mouth is a chef in the Hate Mountain prison. He has been cooking for the prisoners in the prison all his life. But because his father was a secular disciple of Shaolin Temple, he established the foundation of Shaolin Temple's hard martial arts since he was young, and he also came into contact with some strange masters and bandits. He chopped firewood and chopped vegetables every day for decades, and he actually created an invincible saber technique." After a pause, Kongzhu said with a serious expression, "Do you still remember the best archery in the world? Archer god Tang Lai. Not bad. It was archer god Tang Lai. At that time, everyone thought that archer god Tang Lai was the #1 expert in the Hate Mountain. They didn't even know who Li Big Mouth was. Once, archer god went to the kitchen to inspect the work and saw Li Big Mouth's saber technique when he chopped vegetables. He was immediately deeply shocked. And then, the man in black behind him asked. The noise of the big saber is like a torrential downpour, the cutting of the small saber is like a whisper. The noise of the cutting is like a mess of bullets, the big and small pearls fall on a jade plate. The silver bottle is broken, the liquid is splashed, the iron horse is galloping, the saber and spear are howling. When the song ends, the sound of the saber is like silk being torn apart. This was archer god Tang Lai's evaluation of Li Big Mouth's saber technique. Tang Lai was delighted and asked Li Big Mouth to have a match with him. Did Li Big Mouth win? Li Big Mouth didn't win, Kongzhu said. He still lost. Archer god is archer god, Xiaomu said with a sigh. It's a pity that I didn't have the chance to meet archer god. Otherwise, I would definitely have a taste of his magical archery. Li Big Mouth didn't lose either, Kongzhu said. Xiaomu's bad temper flared up again as he grumbled, one moment you say Li Big Mouth didn't win, the next moment you say Li Big Mouth didn't lose. Did he win or lose? He didn't win or lose, Kongzhu said. Li Big Mouth knew archer god Tang Lai's strength, so how would he dare to fight with him? So Tang Lai said to Li Big Mouth that they were just casually sparring and didn't know how to use arrows. In the end, archer god used arrows. The man in black asked. Yes, Li Big Mouth's saber technique forced archer god Tang Lai to use arrows. Kongzhu nodded. Tang Lai used arrows to subdue Li Big Mouth. He forced him to retreat. How do you know these things? Xiaomu asked. Why don't I know? Because someone saw Tang Lai, and Tang Lai said it himself, Kongzhu said. Archer god Tang Lai knew of Li Big Mouth's strength, so he began to guide him to develop his saber technique, and made him organize his saber technique and name it. Li Big Mouth didn't study much, so how could he do such a thing? After spending a few months, he finally thought of a way. What way? His saber technique only had 3 moves. One was a straight chop, named chopping firewood. This move was comprehended from his many years of chopping firewood. The second move was a horizontal chop, named chopping vegetables. This move was comprehended from chopping cabbages for more than 30 years. The last move was an upward or downward slash, and he named it eviscerate. It was trained from his daily practice of removing the bones of animals or the meat in the cracks of bones. He only had these 3 moves, but he was invincible with these 3 moves, and became the saber king of his generation. Xiaomu pointed at the Lord of Saber Luo Jin and asked, then why did he slash out 5 times just now? Why could he slash out another 5 times? For the previous 5 slashes, he used his family's falling rain saber technique, or rather, the falling rain saber technique that was integrated with the unique technique of the saber manual. Obviously, those 5 slashes didn't cut this kid into 2. What he used now was the true unique technique of the saber manual. Even so, the black-clothed man behind him said, there are only 3 moves in the saber manual, how could he slash out 5 times? That is unknown. Kongzhu was a little annoyed by these 2 people's questions, and said, it is possible that Li Big Mouth had other moves that were not recorded in the saber manual, or it could be a saber technique that the Lord of Saber Luo Jin created after living in seclusion for more than 20 years. Who would know such a secret? Xiaomu laughed coldly, and said, I hope Luo Jin's saber isn't too sharp. If he cleanly chopped Fang Yan into pieces, I wouldn't have the chance to make a move. Kongzhu coldly glanced at his little brother and said, watch the battle carefully. From their point of view, this time, Fang Yan would die without a doubt. It was also because of this reason that they could still chat and talk about the secrets of the Jianghu in this kind of life and death battlefield. If it was anyone else who dared to so casually raise a long black saber and slash at him, Fang Yan would have already rushed forward and slapped that person in the face, and cursed, "Are you sick? If you're sick, go back and get treated." But this person was the Lord of Sabers. Although his saber was not beautiful, and the name of his saber technique was not flashy, this person was the Lord of Sabers. He was a saber expert who had been famous for decades. Fang Yan had no choice but to be careful. When he walked towards him, Fang Yan was already on guard. His legs spread apart, his body slightly bowed, and his body swayed left and right, making a roly-poly toy posture. When the Lord of Sabers slashed out with his saber, Fang Yan felt that this saber technique was even more strange. It was too strange. Even the most useless member of the Fang family, Fang Yingxiong, could easily subdue it with brute force or skillful attacks without the use of qi. Perhaps even the most useless member of the Fang family, Fang Yingxiong, could easily defeat it. Fang Yan could completely avoid this saber, and he could use Drunken Crane riding the wind to deal with it, making it impossible for the Lord to find his real body. But Fang Yan didn't do this. The Taiji heart made his 5 senses extremely sharp, and there was a voice in his heart telling him not to do such a thing. Fang Yan didn't dodge, his body moved, and he faced the Lord of Sabers head-on. Facing the saber with both hands, it looked extremely stupid. The Lord of Sabers' eyes slightly trembled, and a trace of doubt flashed on his face. Then, his expression became even colder, and the strength of his saber became even fiercer. The long saber arrived in an instant. Apart from the blunt wind brought by the heavy blade, there was still no abnormality. He still couldn't feel a trace of energy. Not even a trace of killing intent. Fang Yan's body entered the range of the long saber. He wanted to use his speed advantage to enter the blind spot of the Lord of Sabers. The human body's organs were fixed, and the range of movement was also limited. Therefore, everyone's body had some blind spots that were hard to reach. For example, your back, your ribs, or any other place. When the Lord of Sabers fiercely slashed, his chest was the blind spot. Because if he stretched out his arm and raised the long saber, he wouldn't be able to use his arm and the long saber to protect his chest. Therefore, Fang Yan wanted to give him a fatal blow there. This was the attack route that he had already calculated. Everything went as he expected. No, it was even smoother than he had imagined. He easily entered the blind spot, and his fist was already aimed at the Lord of Sabers' heart. As long as his fist hit the Lord of Sabers' heart, the Lord of Sabers' heart might be blasted out of his body. Whoosh! Fang Yan suddenly sensed danger. He felt a piercingly cold killing intent coming at him. All the pores on his body stood up, and he could feel his heart beating violently. A majestic killing intent came at him. It locked onto him from all directions. Fang Yan was like a puppet whose acupoints had been sealed, or a magician had cast a spell on him. He couldn't move his body at all. Fang Yan finally understood that this was a scam. This was the biggest scam. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.